The life of a ninja beginning in the Hidden Mist Village. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 151, Bewitching, Part 1. After finding a medical tent, Nanashi and her clone carried the two dying people. Before they could step into it, they saw Meditarumi hurriedly dragging out a medical ninja. "Doctor, can you please check on my companions?" The little girl pointed at the two people who were frozen and said anxiously. The medical ninja, who was already unhappy after being forcibly dragged out by her, was stunned when he saw the two people who were frozen in the ice. He waved his hands and said, "What a joke. They are frozen into ice. How can they be saved?" Nanashi and her clone gently put the two people who were frozen, looked up and said, "It's only the surface of their bodies that is frozen. The water in their bodies has not condensed into ice." As he said that, he tapped the ice on the two people and lifted the spell. Then he saw that the thick ice layer was quickly reduced at a speed visible to the naked eye, revealing the two people covered in blood. Seeing this, the man went forward to check curiously, shook his head again, and said regretfully, "No, the body temperature has dropped to this level. There is no difference from a corpse." With rich medical experience, he clearly sensed that the two still had vitality and were not really dead, but their hands and feet were cold, and their body temperature was incredibly low, not far from death. In order to let them hold on for a while longer, I deliberately lowered their body temperature to this level. Qishuang sighed and placed his hand on Zabuza's heart. After using mental power to connect with the ice attribute chakra that he had injected into the other person's body, he immediately drove the cold air out of Zabuza's body and released the state of low temperature freezing. Then, Zabuza's silent body seemed to be a restarted machine, and the cells gradually regained activity, and the body temperature slowly rose, and the originally extremely slow heartbeat frequency also gradually increased. Although it was still a little weaker than a normal person, it was far from the lifeless look just now. Interesting. The medical ninja circled around Zabuza twice, pinching his chin and nodding constantly. Although he was surprised at the changes in the injured at first, he was a doctor after all, and his understanding of the human body was far beyond that of ordinary people. Combined with the examination just now, he quickly understood the reason for the change. It was the young man who used the ice escape next to him who used the ice escape to cool down and suppress the body activity of the injured, thereby delaying the death of the two injured. He won them a chance to receive treatment. Then, he called two assistants out of the medical tent, carried Zabuza in, and said to Qishuang and the others, "Your companion is seriously injured. Be prepared." Then, he glanced at the unconscious king next to him, frowned and said, "We are a little short of manpower. Since you have the ability to delay time, keep him in this state. Wait until we urgently treat the little ghost just now, then deal with this." Hearing this, Qishuang nodded and said, "Thank you for the reminder." Fortunately, considering that Zabuza was the most seriously injured, in order to allow Zabuza to receive treatment as soon as possible, he took the lead in unsealing him, and the injury of the leader king was lighter, so he should be able to hold on for a while. If he unsealed the blue leader first, he would have to spend more energy to freeze the leader again in order to adjust the treatment order of the two. Then, under the worried and expectant eyes of Ninashimo and Meditarumi, the medical ninja opened the tent door and walked in slowly. On the other side, the seriously injured Uchiha Obito, led by Zetsu, returned to the dark cave. Looking at the boy who was thrown on the ground by Zetsu, with scars all over his body like a broken doll, the old man on the stone chair squinted and asked, "How did he get hurt like this?" Zetsu spread his hands and replied helplessly, "I don't know what happened. When I left, he was killing people everywhere. When I looked back, he was beaten down by someone. If it weren't for the telepathic message of the white Zetsu on him, I would have died in the hands of those Miss Ninjas if I had returned a step later." As soon as the voice fell, the swirling white hood wrapped around Obito's head slowly opened, and the white Zetsu attached to him slowly peeled off from Obito's body like an eggshell being peeled. Then, the muddy-like white Zetsu squirmed rapidly on the ground and turned into a human figure with a whirlpool face again, but his whole body was covered with uneven scars. At the same time, the scars on Obito's body next to him were much less, but it was still horrible. We ran into a strange Miss Ninja. He caught the weakness of little Obito and seemed to be particularly aware of his ability. He beat us down in a few rounds. The whirlpool-faced white Zetsu said sadly. If Black Zetsu hadn't arrived in time, the two of them would have been killed. Hearing this, the old man showed an unhappy look on his face. He leaned on the long handle of a sickle next to him and slowly stood up, saying, "Forget it, I don't want to listen to your messy stuff." Then, he slowly walked to the side of the little boy, but saw that the other party was lying on the ground with a dull look in his eyes, his upper and lower lips opening and closing, as if he was saying something. Gently tilting his ear, he heard an intermittent voice, as if calling someone. "Lin, Lin, Lin." Seeing this, the old man slightly raised the corners of his mouth, revealing a meaningful smile. He leaned on the long handle of the sickle, slowly straightened up, looked at the boy on the ground and whispered, "I learned about your unfortunate experience from White Zetsu, and I'm deeply sorry for this." Seeing that the little boy's eyes were empty, and he did not respond, he continued, "However, I have a ninjutsu that can bring people back to life, which can let you see your loved ones again." The old man's words seemed to have a strange magic, and Obito's empty one eye slowly became more lively. He tried to turn his head, looked at the old man with eagerness with his one eye, and said excitedly, "Really? Really? Is there really a ninjutsu that can bring people back to life in this world?" Lin's death made his world dark from then on. Although he had never heard of a ninjutsu that could bring people back to life in the world, at this moment, he was extremely eager for this ninjutsu to really exist. Even if it was fake, he hoped it would become true. But he didn't notice that the Black Zetsu and the Uzumaki-faced White Zetsu next to him had a hint of intriguing smile on their faces. Seeing Obito's reaction, the old man secretly breathed a sigh of relief. If the other party had no reaction at all and was completely disappointed, then he would really be helpless. There is a ninjutsu called Jido Reincarnation that can be activated by the Samurai to revive the dead. The old man looked at the boy and said slowly, "Reincarnation. Reincarnation. Reincarnation. Ha ha ha. Rin is saved. Rin is saved." Obito cried with joy and laughed very happily. Unfortunately, he only noticed that there was a ninjutsu that could revive his beloved Rin, but he did not notice the harsh conditions for using the ninjutsu. Seeing that the little boy had taken his words to heart, the old man continued, "But what can you do if you resurrect her? In this cruel and fragile world, your happiness is not guaranteed at all. If she can die once, she can die a second, third, and fourth time. And how many times can you resurrect her? You know, this kind of resurrection comes at a very heavy price. Being able to be resurrected once is already a gift from God. No one is allowed to be resurrected a second time. The reincarnation technique should only work once on the same person, and there is a limit to the resurrection. Otherwise, it would be too buggy to find someone to exchange eyes and use the resurrection technique in turn." Chapter 152, Bewitching, Part 2. Hearing this, Obito opened his one eye wide, stared at the old man closely, and kept begging, "I will protect Lin well, and I will not let her get hurt this time. Please, please help me. I want to learn this ninjutsu that can bring people back to life." Because he was seriously injured by the Mist Ninja Boy, his skin was torn, and it was very difficult for him to move his fingers. Even so, he still relied on his tenacious willpower to stretch out his left hand and grab the old man's trouser leg. "Protect her?" The old man sneered, stared at Obito's one eye, and said slowly, "Why do you say you have the ability to protect her? Who do you think you are?" Ignoring the old man's ridicule, Obito said anxiously, "I have a Mangeki Sharingan. With this eye, I will definitely be able to protect Lin." As he said that, he gathered his chakra to his right eye, and the original 3 black Magatama Sharingan changed into another form, as if a black shuriken was imprinted in his eye. What can a mere Mangeki do? Such power is still too small. The old man shook his head and sighed, "My eyes were far better than yours back then, but I still couldn't protect my beloved brother, didn't I?" He remembered his brother who died tragically on the battlefield during the war. Seeing that the old man had no intention of agreeing, Obito begged, "No, no. This time, I will be very careful and protect Lin very carefully. Please, teach me reincarnation. The old man looked at him deeply and laughed angrily. Boy, do you understand how the girl you love died? You don't even know who the enemy is, and you dare to say that you can protect her. It's ridiculous. Yes, yes. Obito was about to answer, but the words were stuck in his throat and he couldn't spit them out. What's wrong? Am I wrong? Seeing that he was hesitant to speak, the old man leaned on the handle of the sickle and ridiculed him unceremoniously. Hearing this, Obito loosened the old man's trouser legs, clenched his fists, and almost squeezed out a sentence from his teeth. It was Kakashi. It was Kakashi who killed Rin. The heartbreaking scene reappeared in his mind. Kakashi killed Rin with the help of his Sharingan's Chidori. Although he didn't want to believe what he saw, Rin's death was very real. Rin died at the hands of Kakashi. Died at the hands of his best friend, the good friend he entrusted everything to. He couldn't figure out why Kakashi killed Rin. That was Rin. No, it wasn't Kakashi who killed Rin. At this painful and tangled moment, Obito heard the old man's voice as warm as the spring breeze. Who was that? Obito asked in astonishment. It was the war. It was this cruel world. It was this world dominated by ninjas. The old man replied loudly. That slightly hoarse voice, like the sound of a temple bell, with an indescribable solemnity and compassion, soothed the irritability, hatred, and pain in Obito's heart. World. Obito muttered blankly. Yes, the world. The old man nodded and continued. It is the world. It is this world that killed your beloved Rin. No matter what the reason is that Kakashi killed Rin, it is ultimately related to the war between Konoha and Kirigakure. And the war is the culprit that killed Rin. War. Obito was still at a loss. Staring at the boy's single eye, the old man said seriously, humans have all kinds of distracting thoughts, or in other words, that is selfishness. When they are not powerful enough to realize those selfish desires, they will choose to endure, but once they have the power to realize those selfish desires, they will choose to use their own power to satisfy their personal desires. This is the beginning of the struggle. The so-called ninjas are just a group of people who have the power to realize their personal selfish desires. When the scale of the struggle expands from 2 people to 3 people, 4 people, 10 people, 100 people, all the way to tens of thousands of people, that is war. War is nothing more than the product of the escalation of personal selfish struggles into collective struggles. You can use the Mangekyo Sharingan to defeat 1 person, 2 people, 10 people, 100 people, but you can't prevent the birth of war. You can protect Lin once, twice, 10 times, 100 times, but there will always be a time when you are tired and relaxed. At that time, it will be the time when Lin will be swallowed by war again. Therefore, simply resurrecting your loved one cannot solve the fundamental problem. As long as there is a possibility of war breaking out in this world, your Lin will die again. Hearing this, Obito's will to revive Rin was completely extinguished. He could fully foresee the scene where the resurrected Rin died on the battlefield again. He would experience the pain of parting with Rin once again. Then, what should I do? He asked woodenly. Create a world that everyone is satisfied with, so that there will be no more wars. The old man looked at the boy deeply and continued, and you can also reunite with your beloved Rin in that world. Get eternal happiness and joy. No war can destroy everything you have. Does such a world really exist? Obito asked doubtfully. A world that can satisfy everyone is like a myth. Yes. The old man smiled and nodded, and then said, the key to that world is called Infinite Tsukuyomi. Then, he pointed to the huge stone statue deep in the cave and said, that is the body of the 10 tails, called Outer Path Demon statue. We only need to restore it to its original appearance, use its power, and cooperate with the Rinnegan to perform an ultimate illusion covering the entire world. Infinite Tsukuyomi. Let everyone live in their own dreams and get everything they desire, so that there will never be another war. And the people in the illusion can rely on the 10 tails to survive like me, without having to work hard or fight for their lives, and can obtain eternal happiness. As he said, he pointed to a grey-white catheter behind his head that was connected to the golem. It was with the power of this golem that he was able to drag this dying body and live until now without eating or drinking. Hearing this, Obito looked at the stone-like golem, and there was something inexplicable in his eyes. How about it? Are you willing to help me create such a world? The old man asked the boy with a smile, but his fingers tightly gripped the long handle of the sickle. Uchihara knew too much. If he really didn't want to help him, then he could only kill him. Although he was very sorry to lose such a backup chess piece, he didn't want his plan to be exposed in advance. On the ground, the boy looked at the golem with increasingly fiery eyes and agreed, saying, "Okay, I do." The bug that Obito did not directly resurrect Rin was solved. Chapter 153 Return to the village. End of volume. In the Kirigakure camp, after several hours of emergency treatment, the medical ninja walked out with a tired face and weak steps. "Doctor, how is our companion?" Mediterumi hurried forward and asked. "It's alright." The medical ninja waved his hand, looked at Nana Qishuang again, and said tiredly, because the boy's ice escape cooling treatment was very timely, the injury did not worsen further, which gave us enough time to rescue him. Your companion finally saved his life. However, he was injured too badly before. I'm afraid he will need to rest for a long time before he can recover. In addition, this is the front line, and all kinds of supplies are not complete, which is not conducive to his recovery. Our medical department will apply to the higher-ups to approve him to withdraw from the battlefield and return to Kirigakure village to recuperate. The wounded who are too seriously injured and cannot be cured in a short time can only be a burden to stay on the front line. Not only do they occupy the limited medical resources on the front line, but they also bring pressure to others. Let them retreat to Kirigakure village. This is the best way to deal with it. Is that so? Hearing that Zabuza was injured like this and had to withdraw from the battlefield, Mediterumi's eyebrows were almost twisted into a ball. Although she was very happy to hear that her companions were out of danger, she was still a little reluctant to leave her companions who had been with her for many days. Seeing that she was in a bad mood, Nanashi hurriedly comforted her. "Okay. Isn't Zabuza okay? We will see each other again in the future." "Oh." Helplessly, Mediterumi responded, very depressed. "If you have anything to say, let's talk later. You should relieve the low temperature of this guy first." The impatient medical ninja pointed to the young man with an eye mask next to him who was cold and shivering. "Sorry, doctor." Nanashi nodded in thanks, then made a seal with his hand and pointed a finger at the center of the blow leader's eyebrows. After the thawing process on Zabuza, he was already very proficient in this method and could quickly achieve the goal with the hand seal. Relief. With a light shout, he immediately removed the coldness from the leader's body. The young man with the eye mask, who was originally pale, gradually regained his vitality and left the state of being a corpse. Then, the medical ninja called his assistant again and carried the thawed king in. It seemed that King's injuries were much lighter than Zabuza's, and it seemed that the medical ninja had experience in dealing with them, because the two were injured for the same reason. This time, they treated King in a much shorter time. In the end, the reply to Qishuang and the others was still similar. King's injuries were also very serious. Although it was much better than Zabuza, compared with other injured people, it was still a serious injury that was difficult to recover in a short time. He needed to return to the village to recuperate. Because the leader was seriously injured, the superiors were considerate and did not assign new tasks. Their team temporarily stopped activities, and Qishuang and the others took the initiative to take on the responsibility of caring for the wounded. The two took turns to take care of their unconscious companions. "Are they still not awake?" Looking at the little girl in front of the sick bed, Qishuang asked in a low voice. He had just come back from outside and was going to replace Mediterumi to continue caring. "Not yet." Mediterumi shook her head, not in a good mood. Perhaps the injuries were too severe. Several hours had passed since the emergency treatment, and Aoki and Zabuza still showed no signs of waking up. This disappointed the little girl who was waiting for them to wake up with joy. Seeing this, Nanashiro comforted her softly. "It's okay. Didn't the doctor say that they are no longer in danger of life, but they are too seriously injured, and it will be difficult for them to wake up in a short time?" But, the little girl was about to say something but stopped. She heard from the medical ninjas that all the seriously injured mist ninjas in the camp would be sent back to the hidden mist village tomorrow. If Aoki and Zabuza still couldn't wake up, they might not even have the chance to say goodbye and would have to part ways. At this moment, the curtain of the tent for the wounded was pulled open, and a mist ninja walked in, and walked straight towards Nanashiro and the others. "Excuse me, what can I do for you?" Nanashiro asked in surprise as the man approached. In addition to the two wounded Aoki and Zabuza, there were only two idle people here, him and Meditarumi. It seemed that the other party was not looking for the sleeping leader, but the two of them. The man took out a document from his pocket, and handed it over. He glanced at the two and said, "Nanashiro, Chunin, Terumi Mei, the command has decided to send you to join the team escorting the wounded. You will set off with the wounded tomorrow and return to the Hidden Mist Village. Send us." Nanashiro took the document doubtfully and opened it. He saw a long list of escort personnel. Among them, his and Terumi Mei's names were listed. Let me see. Terumi Mei squeezed over with great interest. Nanashiro had no choice but to pass the document in his hand to her. "Yeah, we can go back to the Hidden Mist Village too." Seeing her name, the little girl jumped up happily. "Shh." Nanashiro quickly made a gesture to silence her voice and said, "Keep your voice down. There are still many wounded here." As he said that, he glanced at the wounded lying on other beds. "Yes, I understand." Meditarumi quickly covered her mouth and nodded desperately, but her eyes curved into crescents still couldn't hide her excitement. "Sorry, my companion hasn't been home for a long time, and I'm a little out of control." Qishuang took the document from the little girl, closed it, and handed it back to the mist ninja who delivered the message. The man took the document, sighed, and said enviously, "You are so lucky. 100 people out of thousands of people can win the prize. It's really enviable. I haven't been back since the war started. It's been several years, and I don't know what's going on at home." After saying that, he shook his head again and sighed. Seeing this, Qishuang didn't know how to comfort them, so she could only laugh dryly and said, "This war has been going on for so many years. I think it's almost over. I heard that the war has been stopped in the West and negotiations are underway. I guess it's almost over here too. I think it's not far from time for everyone to go home." Hearing this, the messenger mist ninja also smiled a little and sighed, "I hope so." Then, he disappeared outside the tent door with the documents. The next morning, Qishuang and the other two joined the escort team, took the seriously injured people accumulated in the camp in the past few days to the ship, and returned to the Hidden Mist Village by sea. Not long after they returned to the Hidden Mist Village, the high-level officials who failed in the plan to destroy Konoha issued an order for ceasefire negotiations, and he and Meditarumi stayed in the Hidden Mist Village and did not return to the front line. The ceasefire order of the Hidden Mist Village also completely dispelled the idea of the Hidden Mist Village to continue the war, because the truce of the other three parties means that they will face the pressure of Konoha alone. Years of war have drained Konoha's wealth. Even if the opponent is strong on the outside, but weak on the inside, Kirigakure is not sure of a complete victory. Forcing the war to start will only consume the wealth that the third Reikage has saved with great difficulty, and in the end it will benefit the Sand Village, Rock Village, and Mist Village. After weighing the pros and cons, Kirigakure reluctantly chose to retreat. Because the plot of the second volume I have preset has a long time span, the length of the second volume may be very long. Chapter 154 ends. Hahaha. I'm finally back. On the rooftop of the hospital, Meditarumi opened her arms and flew freely on the rooftop like a happy little bird. She greedily absorbed every ray of air here. Because it was covered by fog all year round, the air in the Hidden Mist Village was full of moisture and much more humid than other places. The moist airflow rushed into the nose along with the breath, giving people a warm feeling that was refreshing. She knew that was the feeling of home. She was finally back to this kind place. Seeing the little girl's happy look, Qishuang couldn't help but smile a little relaxed. Although the Hidden Mist Village also had hidden dangers, it was much easier here than the battlefield life, where he had to put his head on his belt every day. His tense nerves could finally relax. "Hey, Qishuang!" the little girl shouted. Qishuang then noticed that she had climbed up the narrow guardrail on the edge of the rooftop, opened her hands, and walked forward carefully, swaying. It seemed that she didn't use chakra to attach, but simply relied on her arms to balance and walk on it. "Do you have anything to say?" Qishuang jumped up and landed on a support on the rooftop. He wanted to stand as high as possible to take a good look at the scenery of Kirigakure. When he first came here a few years ago, he was busy with ninja training because he knew there was a war outside. He didn't have time to seriously experience the daily life of Kirigakure. He made himself like an ascetic monk. Now, he finally has time to enjoy it. You said, when will the others on the front line come back? Terumi asked Qishuang, walking on the guardrail that was less than the width of her feet. Although she was very happy to return to the village early, she still couldn't let go of her other compatriots on the front line. Looking at the hazy floors in the fog, Qishuang said slowly, although the general trend of the armistice negotiations has been determined, it is not so easy to withdraw. We are different from Kirigakure, which has not launched a full-scale war. We can't withdraw like them. We also have to guard against sneak attacks from Konoha, inventory supplies, and sort out logistics. So, the retreat must be divided into batches, and slowly withdraw in waves. I guess we will see other wounded soldiers withdrawn soon. After hearing his words, Terumi's face was squeezed like a bitter gourd, and she sighed. It's so troublesome. Of course. Seeing this, Qishuang shook her head and smiled. War is not a game. How can you fight and withdraw as you say? Plus the top leaders have to negotiate with Konoha. It is estimated that this matter cannot be finalized in a few months. By the time all our Kirigakure people are withdrawn, it will be almost half a year later. Hearing this, Terumi's little face was squeezed even tighter, like dough. For a child of her age, these twists and turns are too troublesome and difficult to understand. She sighed softly, and seeing Qishuang looking around, she also learned to look around, hoping to find some new fun. Not long after, the collapsed houses and buildings near the village entrance attracted her attention. Look, what's going on over there? She pointed in the direction of the village entrance and asked. When she came back earlier, she followed the escort team and passed by there, and she saw the ruins, but because she hadn't been home for a long time, she was a little excited and didn't take it too seriously, so she forgot about it. Now, seeing the collapsed ruins again, she finally remembered it. Looking in the direction of Terumi's finger, Qishuang also noticed the large collapsed buildings near the village entrance. He thought for a moment and said slowly, I heard from others that when we were fighting on the front line, a rebellion broke out in the Land of Water. The rebel forces led by several bloodline limit families wanted to seize the power of Kirigakure by force. The ruins at the entrance of the village should have been destroyed when they fought with the village. The Land of Water is isolated overseas and can even be said to be isolated from the world. If there is no special reason, no village would be willing to go to the trouble of crossing the ocean to harass Kirigakure. Apart from the civil strife in the Land of Water, there is probably no other reason that can cause such serious damage to Kirigakure. Moreover, he did not hear any news of other villages attacking Kirigakure from the sea. Rebellion. Hearing this, the little girl on the guardrail was shocked. Her feet swayed, and she almost fell off the roof. She quickly used her chakra to absorb the guardrail under her feet and stabilized her body. She was surprised and said, how could someone rebel? Don't they know that we are fighting in the front and need a stable rear so that everyone can fight without worries? Even as a child, she understood how important a stable rear is in wartime. This is also the reason why the Kirigakure village had made plans several times earlier to bypass the defense line and destroy the Konoha village. As long as the enemy's rear is destroyed, the enemy will be able to collapse without attacking. Standing on the bracket, Qishuang shrugged and said helplessly, you know the situation in our village. Compared with the other 4 villages, it is indeed a bit unsatisfactory. Every year, there are a few who want to challenge the Mizukage and change the world, or simply directly rebel and escape from the village to become a rebel ninja. It's just that this time it was a bit bigger and a bit scary. There's nothing to be surprised about. In order to train the Kirigakure to become cold-blooded elite killers, the Kirigakure village has set a series of special rules since the first Mizukage. Killing a companion is one of the rules for ninja graduation. Not only that, there are many killing rules like this. As a result, it has become a normal practice for the mist ninjas to kill each other. But everyone is not a born killer, so they are naturally very resistant to such rules. It's just that the village suppressed it with force, and with the high level appeasement, the killing rule was also limited to the ninjas, not affecting the civilians. Everyone muddled along, and the occasional rebels were quickly wiped out. But like this time, several bloodline limit families participated in the rebellion and destroyed a corner of the Mist Village. This is the first time in the history of the entire Mist Village. In addition, the timing is so coincidental, and it happened when the Mist Village was fighting externally, and the internal defense was empty. Qishuang is more willing to believe that this is a premeditated action, rather than an impulsive act of an individual or organization. Don't they know that launching such a large-scale battle will hurt many innocent people? Terumi pointed to the ruins at the entrance of the village and said angrily. She understood those people's dissatisfaction and their eagerness to change the status quo, but understanding was one thing, and it was not a reason to harm innocent people. She could not forgive those who hurt ordinary people. Hearing this, Qishuang sighed, looked up at the foggy sky above her head, and said in a complicated tone, "In this world, there is no reform that can succeed without bloodshed. You are still too naive." Chapter 155 Reform. I don't care. They are wrong for affecting civilians. Terumi turned her face away angrily and slapped Qishuang on the back of her head. Qishuang smiled bitterly and shook her head, saying nothing more. Some things are indeed not something that children of this age can understand. Change means breaking the old rules and establishing a new order. But under any order, there are both beneficiaries and losers. Changes in order will affect the pie of the beneficiaries. In this way, in this situation, there will be defenders of the old order and reformers of the new rules. The two sides will have irreconcilable contradictions and will not stop until death. The final result is that both sides resort to force and decide the outcome by force. Obviously, the reformers still lost in this rebellion of the Land of Water. They just barely broke into the hidden Mist Village and did not even touch the Mizukage building in the hinterland. The strength comparison between the reformists and the old forces can be seen. This is also the result of the Hidden Mist sending a large number of troops to the front line to participate in the war, and the internal defense is empty. If not, Qishuang even doubted whether those people could break through the external defense of the Hidden Mist Village. However, speaking of this, those who want reform are generally those who do not benefit from the old order. After all, only a few vested beneficiaries who understand the righteousness and devote themselves to reform are. After all, everyone is selfish. Compared with the vested beneficiaries, the benefits that the disbeneficiaries get in the old order are not much, and it can even be said that they are extremely rare. Without the accumulation of benefits, their own strength is far inferior to that of the vested beneficiaries. If the military force is inferior to others, reform is naturally very difficult, and failure is also reasonable. This is also the reason why many reforms in history have been difficult. To shake the old order of the Land of Water is definitely not something that can be accomplished overnight. Thinking of this, he took a deep look at the little girl who was still sulking at the edge of the rooftop, the future 5th generation Mizukage, the woman who opened a new era for the Hidden Mist Village. Not knowing what he was thinking, Terumi lay on the guardrail, looking at the ruins at the entrance of the village, and asked sadly, which bloodline limit families participated in the rebellion? Ninjas with bloodline limit talents can quickly grow into the backbone elites of the village with a little training. Compared with ordinary people without any talent, they are more likely to form combat power and their growth limit is higher than most people. This is also the reason why every village attaches great importance to bloodline limit families. With the bloodline limit inheritance, the village can easily obtain a group of elite combat forces. And this time, the bloodline limit family took the lead in the rebellion, which was really disappointing. She didn't understand. She really didn't understand. There are two main ones. Hearing this, Qishuang jumped off the scaffold, slowly walked to the side of the little girl, leaned on the guardrail, and continued. One is the platform release Wind Clan, and the other is the ice release Snow Clan. Ice release. Hearing this, Terumi turned her head in astonishment, looked at the boy in surprise and said, "You are not." Stop. Knowing what she wanted to say, Qishuang hurriedly interrupted the little girl and said, "Although I can also ice release, I really have nothing to do with their Snow Clan. Even if there is, it was countless generations ago. Don't lump me in with them. That's a crime of treason and you will be executed." The Snow Clan and the Wind Clan launched a rebellion when the Kirigakure was fighting against the outside world, which was tantamount to stabbing everyone in the back. If there is no severe punishment, not only will they be unable to explain to the inside, but they will also lose their prestige to the outside world. Even if the top leaders value the power of the bloodline limit family, they will choose to cut off their arms and make up their minds to kill them all, and use this to deter other reform forces that are ready to make a move. Otherwise, with the example of these two clans in front, and others launching rebellions one after another, the Hidden Mist village will probably fall apart and be destroyed in civil strife in a short time. Therefore, any family or individual who participated in the rebellion this time will definitely not be able to survive. The top leaders of the Hidden Mist will do their best to eliminate the rebellion and set an example. He doesn't want to be implicated by the Snow Clan because of the ice release. Really, it doesn't matter? Mediterumi asked again with a wink. Really, it doesn't matter? Qishuang replied with a dark face. In his original memory, his parents were just ordinary people. Later, they died in an accident, and he became an orphan, and was adopted by the orphanage of the Hidden Mist. Later, he accidentally awakened the ice release bloodline limit, and was noticed by the administrator, so he had the opportunity to enter the ninja school. In these memories, he couldn't find the shadow of the Snow Clan at all. The only thing that can connect him to the Snow Clan is the inheritance of the ice escape contained in his blood. This is a fact that he cannot deny, that he has a certain kinship with the Snow Clan. If someone uses this to make a fuss and forcibly classifies him as one of the rebels of the Snow Clan, it is really impossible to defend himself. Fortunately, when the Snow Clan rebelled, he happened to be not in the water country, but fighting on the front line, and had made many military achievements. With this relationship, the people above should not turn a blind eye. As long as you patiently check, you can get the conclusion that he is innocent. Execution or something, it should not be necessary, but it is estimated that he will be difficult. On the 7th day, after they returned to Kirigakure, the comatose king finally woke up. Where is this? Looking at the white ceiling above his head, King asked in a daze. This is the hospital in Kirigakure village. A familiar male voice came into his ears, and he turned his head to see Nana Qishuang and Terumi Medi standing happily by the bed. The Hidden Mist village? King's thoughts were stuck. He was really confused about the current situation and asked hurriedly, "Aren't we at war? Why did you suddenly return to the Hidden Mist village?" Although he was very happy to return to the Hidden Mist village, he was really worried because the front line was still fighting. "Captain." Mediterumi touched the edge of the bed and sat down, smiling sweetly. "The war has stopped, and the higher-ups are negotiating with Konoha." Triumph? King felt that his brain was not enough, and asked anxiously, "How long have I slept?" "The higher-ups have already negotiated with Konoha." Terumi meditated for a while and said slowly, "It should be 8 or 9 days. Since the last plan, to destroy Konoha with the three-tail failed, the higher-ups have issued an order to cease fire and negotiate. So that's it." King suddenly realized. The plan to destroy Konoha with the three-tail was originally the last gamble of the Hidden Mist village. If it succeeded, the situation would naturally reverse, and the Hidden Mist village would never choose to cease fire. But in the end, something went wrong and failed. Faced with the need to pacify the battlefield on the western front and concentrate its forces on the eastern front, Kirigakure was really overwhelmed and had no choice but to choose a ceasefire. At this moment, an Anbu of Kirigakure broke into the wood through the window. A cold voice came from under the white mask with a ripple mark. "Nanabe, take the order. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels." Chapter 156 Test. Received an order? A mission? Qishuang was stunned for a moment, then realized that he must have been assigned a mission by his superiors. The mask Miss Ninja Anbu didn't say a word, but silently took out a scroll from his pocket and threw it directly to him. When Qishuang caught the scroll and wanted to ask again, the other party had disappeared. Only the swaying curtains at the window were left, suggesting that someone had been there. "What mission? Let me see it." Terumi Mei didn't say anything and took the scroll out of the dazed Qishuang's hand. He opened it and saw the glaring red words wanted written at the beginning of the scroll. He scanned it again and 3 clear half-length photos appeared in his eyes. 2 men and 1 woman, all in their 20s. Their names were also marked under the photos, namely Zuhu, Zuxing, and Zuha. Based on the names of the 3 people, Terumi Mei roughly guessed the reason for the wanted order. Because the surname Zhu is the surname of the Ice Release clan who participated in the rebellion. Looking down the scroll, she found the reason for the wanted order. The remnants of the traitors shall be killed without mercy. At the bottom, the executor of the hunt for the 3 people was designated, Qishuang. Why are there no names of me and the captain? Terumi Mei shouted subconsciously. Then, in the helpless expression of Qishuang, she turned the entire task scroll over and over again, but still could not find the names of the 3 people, only Qishuang. Let me see. Seeing the little girl flipping the scroll several times, King could no longer suppress her curiosity, pulled her hand out of the bedsheet, and stretched it over. Here you go. Terumi Mei, who could not find her own name, handed the scroll to the captain sullenly. King took the scroll and quickly scanned the contents, glanced at the boy beside the bed, and then handed the scroll back. Terumi Mei didn't understand why there was only Qishuang's name in it, but it didn't mean that he didn't understand it either. He had also heard a little about the rebellion in the Land of Water. This task was obviously specially prepared for Qishuang by the higher-ups, and had nothing to do with the 3 of them. After receiving the scroll handed back by the leader, Qishuang opened it with great curiosity, and finally saw what the task assigned by the higher-ups was. With your intelligence, you should understand what this task means to you. Lying on the hospital bed, King looked at the boy in front of the bed and said, yes, I know. Qishuang nodded. There must be more than just 3 people involved in the rebellion. In addition to the Ice Release Snow Clan, there is also the Platform Release Wind Clan, with a total number of at least nearly 1,000 people. Excluding those who were killed in the rebellion and those who have been captured, there must be no less than 200 or 300 rebels on the run. There are so many people, but the higher-ups assigned him 3 guys from the Snow Clan, which is obviously a test for him. If he didn't care about the blood relationship and let these 3 people go, the higher-ups would definitely put him in the ranks of the rebels without hesitation. The result, of course, is the same as those rebels, and they will be killed without mercy. If he kills the 3 people without mercy and completes the task beautifully, it means that he has completely drawn a line with the Snow Clan, and his life will remain the same as it is now. No one will link him with the rebels again. That's good to know. You can't let any of these 3 people go, King said in a grim tone. But, it's too dangerous for Qishuang to hunt down 3 people alone, isn't it? Terumi Mei, who was sitting on the bed, said resentfully. She didn't have much objection to killing the rebels, but she was a little worried about Qishuang taking on such a task alone. Hearing this, Qishuang rolled her eyes at her, twitched her lips and said, although only my name is written on the scroll, it doesn't say that I can't bring helpers. Do you really think I will go up and fight 3 people alone? Hearing this, Terumi Mei's eyes lit up and said excitedly, that means you want to bring helpers? Of course. Qishuang nodded. Who do you decide to bring? The little girl asked hurriedly. Looking at her expectant eyes, Qishuang smiled and said, the 3 of them are all at the Chunin level. Originally, it would have been very appropriate to let Zabuza accompany me with you. But, he glanced at the team leader on the hospital bed and Zabuza who was still unconscious on the other side, and said in embarrassment, but Zabuza is too seriously injured, and has not woken up yet. The captain can't get out of bed yet. You have to come over to look after him often, but you probably won't have the time. I think I'd better go to other teams and borrow 2 companions to help. After that, he shook his head, looking very regretful. Who said I don't have time? Hearing this, Terumi stood up from the bed, grabbed one of his arms, and said anxiously, I have plenty of time. I want to go with you to hunt down the rebels. You are not allowed to leave me alone. Qishuang looked at her playfully, suppressed her smile, and said seriously, but, the captain and the other 2 still need you to take care of them? The little girl rolled her eyes and said cunningly, I'm not a medical staff, I don't know anything about medical care, and it's useless to stay here. Besides, there are so many medical ninjas in the hospital. They will take good care of the captain and the other two. The captain and the others don't need my help to take care of them, right, Captain?" As she said, the little girl turned her head and blinked desperately at the young man with an eye mask lying on the bed. Seeing this, King smiled knowingly, and a long-lost feeling of joy surged into his heart. Life on the battlefield is really too tense, and he hasn't experienced such a relaxed atmosphere for a long time. "Captain, please say something." Seeing King smiling foolishly without replying, Terumi Mei was a little anxious. Hearing this, King waved his hand and said with a smile, "Qishuang is the only designated executor of that mission. In other words, when executing that mission, he is the temporary captain and has the right to choose the team members independently. Even I have no right to interfere. It's useless for you to beg me." Hearing this, Terumi Mei was stunned. After thinking for a while, she hugged the little boy's arm tightly, looking at him eagerly, without saying a word. Seeing her pretending to be so pitiful, Qishuang no longer had the interest to continue teasing her, because he knew that, if he continued to tease her, the other party would get angry. Okay, I'll take you there," he said with a smile, while slowly pulling his arm out of Terumi Mei's arms. "Really?" The little girl was immediately delighted. "Really?" Qishuang nodded. "What if there is still one person missing?" she asked again. Qishuang said nonchalantly, "Those three are all Chunin level. With our strength, it should be enough. No matter what happens, we can get out of here safely. If we really can't handle it, we can just come back and find a helper." Fighting on the battlefield for several years gave him enough confidence to face opponents of the same level. Even if he was 2 against 3, he was very confident that he could defeat them. Chapter 157, People's Fear, Part 1. "Is that right?" Terumi said uncertainly, pointing to a busy town at the foot of the mountain. After handling all matters, the two of them left the Hidden Mist village and followed the news from the intelligence department all the way here. After looking around, Nanashiro replied, "There are no other villages nearby, so it should be there." After that, he walked slowly down the mountain along the path. Terumi caught up with them in a few steps and muttered, "The people in the intelligence department are really something. They didn't even follow the target a little closer after finding their specific location. Wouldn't it be more convenient for us to take action? Such a big town, with at least thousands of people living in it. How much effort will it take us to find those 3 guys? It is really a lot of work to find 3 rebels in such an environment. Unfortunately, neither of them is a perception type ninja, and they are not good at tasks such as finding people, which invisibly increases the difficulty of the task." At this time, she began to miss the days when she had the help of Captain Byakugan. With King's Byakugan's ability to search over a wide area, they can directly exclude ordinary people in the town, and then find the 3 people among the remaining people with chakra, which is undoubtedly much easier. Unfortunately, there is no if. Haha. Qishuang, who was walking in front, chuckled twice and said with a smile, "If the intelligence personnel really find the specific location of the 3 people, I'm afraid it won't be our turn to take action. Besides, the intelligence personnel at the bottom only exist to get information, and they are not full-time combat ninjas. They are at most at the level of Chunin, and most of them are Genin, and their combat level is very average. With such strength, they dare not follow too closely. When they find out the specific location of the other party, it is also the time when they expose their whereabouts. Whether they can pass on the news is still an unknown. So, for their own safety, they generally don't follow too closely. Finding a rough location is the limit of their ability. In this world without video surveillance, intelligence collection depends entirely on manual processing. Each intelligence officer is equivalent to a walking surveillance probe. But a person's energy is limited, and the scope of monitoring is also limited. If the Hidden Mist village wants to cover the entire water country with its intelligence network and firmly monitor the overall situation of the water country, it will need a large number of manpower. Even the intelligence personnel at the end of the intelligence network will investigate some local ordinary people in order to expand the scope of intelligence collection. In this case, it is extremely lucky to be able to find out some clues. You know, there are still many wanted guys who have disappeared for countless years and there is no news until now. He didn't dare to ask for too much. It's better to have news than no news. Oh. After hearing his words, Tarumi curled her lips, slightly understood the difficulty of intelligence work, and stopped complaining. Not long after, the two entered the town. There were not many pedestrians on the street, which was a big difference from the hidden mist village. It seemed very deserted, but compared with this ninja world with a relatively backward overall living standard, it was not too bad. There are all kinds of wine shops, hotels, restaurants, and casinos, and there is no shortage of entertainment industry. The average living standard of the town residents can be seen. Compared to many poor villages, where people work hard to make ends meet, or even cannot even get enough food, the average living standard here is much better. Seeing two unfamiliar children breaking into the town, many people on the street cast curious eyes. There was a man and a woman, dressed lightly, carrying luggage bags, and wearing a forehead protector with a ripple mark on their foreheads. They immediately recognized that they were ninjas from the hidden mist village. The thugs who originally planned to blackmail them quietly retreated into the shadows of the corner after seeing the ripple mark. Ninjas are not something that ordinary people like them can provoke. Especially the hidden mist ninjas who like to kill are the kind of people they don't want to contact. Even though the hidden mist village has a clear rule that ninjas are not allowed to interfere with the lives of ordinary people, let alone attack ordinary people, they are still afraid of these bloodthirsty guys. Because the hidden mist village does not have a rule that ninjas cannot attack ordinary people who provoke them. If they really go forward to extort without knowing the consequences, it is tantamount to putting their necks on the knife edge of others, and it would be a waste of death. You know, in the land of water, relying on the rule that the mist ninja will not attack ordinary people, there are many people who provoke the mist ninja and are killed every year. They don't want to be one of those corpses. With so many people, how are you going to investigate their whereabouts? Looking at the pedestrians on the wide street, Tarumi asked with a little worry. Let's find a place to stay first. Qishuang sighed and continued. According to the information given by the intelligence department, the three of them have been hiding in this town for a while. As long as they haven't realized that their whereabouts have been exposed, they should not move in a short time. We can find a foothold first, and then slowly investigate the whereabouts of the three of them. There is no need to rush for the time being. After saying that, he walked towards a hotel on the corner of the street. Seeing this, Tarumi hurriedly followed and didn't mention the matter of looking for someone. Ding-ling-ling. Walking into the hotel, seeing that there was no one at the front desk, Qishuang knocked on a bell next to him. "I'm here." A slightly old voice came from the inner room. Then, with the dull footsteps, a gray-haired old man came out with a smile. Seeing the two children wearing ripple marks in front of the counter, he was stunned at first, and then smiled, and said to the two, "Welcome." However, in Qishuang's eyes, the old man's smile became much stiffer after he noticed their forehead protectors. There was nothing he could do about it. The Kirigakure ninja was notorious, and even the local people in the land of water were afraid of them. If it weren't for the high pressure policy of the Kirigakure village, which strictly prohibited ninjas from attacking ordinary people and stabilized the hearts of the grassroots people, I'm afraid that a large number of people would have fled abroad long ago, making the land of water in name only. Even so, the ordinary people below were not very willing to deal with them, and were a little scared. Only the natives of the Kirigakure village, who often lived with them, were accustomed to the fighting between the Kirigakure ninjas, and were familiar with the atmosphere of living with them, could communicate with them normally. "Boss, we want to stay in the hotel," Qishuang said to him with a smile, and tried her best to make her smile look more kind. Unfortunately, his deliberate smile lost its original naturalness, and instead added an indescribable weirdness, which frightened the old man so much that he couldn't speak. Seeing that the other party was very nervous, Tarumi quickly pulled him away and smiled sweetly to the old man. "Boss, we want to stay in the hotel." Seeing the pretty little girl's sweet smile, the old man was relieved. That ferocious boy looked so scary. Chapter 158, People's Fear, Part 2. You want one room or two rooms? The old man walked to the counter carefully and asked the little girl in a soft voice, trying to make his service seem impeccable. Don't give the other party a chance to find fault. After all, the visitor is a ninja from Kirigakure. Facing the old man's question, Terumi Medi didn't know how to answer for a moment. If they lived separately, it would seem a bit strange. Because back at the front line, the four of them also lived in a tent, which was no different from living in a room. But now, asking her to live in a room alone with Qishuang, she felt that something was wrong. After all, she is also a girl and needs to keep a distance from boys. Unless. Thinking of this, her ears blushed. Seeing that Terumi Medi hesitated to answer, Qishuang immediately guessed that she had some concerns in her heart and immediately said to the old man, "Give us 2 rooms. It's best to have 2 rooms next to each other." At the end, he added another sentence. "Okay." The old man kept a professional smile, nodded gently, and then bent down, as if looking for something behind the counter. Hearing Qishuang's decision, the little girl who was immersed in her wild thoughts suddenly came to her senses. She looked at the old man behind the counter and hesitated to speak, and finally had to bury her head helplessly. Not long after, Qishuang and the others heard a crisp sound and saw the old man holding a bunch of keys and standing up again. "Please follow me." The old man came out from behind the counter with a bunch of keys and took the 2 to the second floor. According to Qishuang's request, after opening the 2 adjacent rooms, the old man handed the keys to the 2 respectively and said with a smile, "2 ninjas, if you have any requests, just ask. I will definitely try my best to satisfy you." After taking the keys, Qishuang rubbed his forehead and said unceremoniously, "Hurry up and get us something to eat. We are almost exhausted after a day's journey." Okay. The old man nodded repeatedly and smiled and replied, "I will prepare it right away. Please wait for a moment." Then, Qishuang saw the old man rushing downstairs. If he hadn't seen it with his own eyes, he would never have believed that such an ordinary person over 50 years old could run at such a speed. It was almost the same as some ninja students who had just entered school not long ago. "Am I so scary?" Pointing at his nose, he asked Terumi in surprise. Although he was not a handsome man, he was still a handsome young man. The old man's sly look really made him depressed. What's more infuriating is that when he was downstairs earlier, the old guy was so scared by him that he couldn't speak. If it weren't for Terumi, he even doubted whether the other party would refuse to accept him as a guest. The identity of the Kirigakure ninja is too intimidating to these civilians. Seeing that he looked as uncomfortable as if he had eaten a fly, Terumi chuckled and said happily, "Just make do with it. It's not like our village outside, just get used to it. I still need to take a hot shower. Ask him to send the food to your room. I'll come over later. Remember to save some for me." After that, she smiled playfully at the little boy, closed the door with a thud, and disappeared behind it. Women are really troublesome. Seeing this, Qishuang twitched her lips helplessly and turned back to her room. Downstairs, the old man received Qishuang's instructions and hurried to the kitchen. He shouted to several chefs, "2 Mist Ninja Masters are upstairs. You should quickly prepare some special dishes and serve them. Be careful, don't annoy those 2 masters. Otherwise, I will deduct all your wages for this month." Hearing that the Mist Ninja Masters were coming, several chefs immediately cheered up and replied with full energy, "Yes, we promised to complete the task." Not only the boss was afraid, but they were also afraid. They were very worried that if the food they made was not to the taste of the 2 masters and made them unhappy, the consequences would be unimaginable. Forget it. The old man, who had just turned around and was about to leave, waved his hand again and turned back and said, "Call me when the food is ready. I'd better go there myself. If you clumsy guys make any mistakes, I won't have anywhere to cry." The old man spat fiercely and then left the kitchen cursing. The 2 waiters in the kitchen who were responsible for delivering meals breathed a sigh of relief. They didn't have to come into contact with those terrible mist ninjas. Not long after, Qishuang, who was taking a nap on the bed, heard a knock on the door. However, the sound came from the next door. He immediately remembered what Terumi had told him and hurriedly got out of bed and opened the door, only to see the innkeeper stretching out a hand and preparing to knock on his door. "Why isn't that sir here?" The old man took back his hand embarrassedly and asked Qishuang in surprise. "She's taking a shower. She probably didn't hear it." Qishuang shrugged and asked again, "Is there anything wrong with your family?" We have prepared the food you ordered earlier, sir. The old man smiled and stepped aside, revealing the dining cart behind him, which had 4 plates on it, containing extremely rich dishes. No wonder I smelled a fragrance when I opened the door. It turned out that you, sir, prepared delicious food. Looking at those tempting dishes, Qishuang's mouth suddenly watered, and he was in a very happy mood, and the fatigue from the long journey was swept away. After saying that, he made way for the door, and the old man pushed the food cart in with fear. In fact, the old man originally wanted to send the food to the room of the girl who looked very cute and made people feel safer, but the sky was not good. He had to bite the bullet and send the food to this boy who looked very dangerous. Fortunately, the boy's mind was focused on the food he brought, and he didn't stare at him closely, which made him feel relieved. Please enjoy your meal. After putting down the food, the old man pushed the food cart out of the room, and then smiled and closed the door. Looking at the smiling face that disappeared behind the door, Qishuang shook his head with a bitter smile and ignored it. No matter how kind he acted, the old man was wary of him. This was the result of the long-term power of the Kirigakure ninja, and it was not something that could be easily changed overnight, or by one person or one thing. Only a very deceptive beautiful face like Meditarumi could make these people temporarily let down their guard. Since the other party was very repulsive to him, he didn't need to deliberately get close to them, because that would only make both sides feel uncomfortable. Right now, it is better to enjoy the food that the other party has brought to your doorstep and fill your stomach. This is the most important thing. I think that with these people's fear of the mist ninja, they should not dare to send to bad food, because that would attract his thunderous wrath. Chapter 159 Search. Just as Qishuang was about to taste the delicious food, there was another knock at the door. Is this old guy really brave enough to disturb me while I'm eating? He stood up with a frown and walked towards the door. Because of the old man's fear, he unconsciously put himself into the other's impression, that kind of scary image of the mist ninja. You. He opened the door impatiently, just wanting to scare the hotel owner, but saw a pretty little girl standing at the door. With wet hair and the fragrance of gardenia, it was Meditarumi who had just finished washing up. Someone knocked on my door just now. The little girl hadn't finished her words yet, as if she smelled something, and sniffed the air hard, and then she found that the tempting fragrance came from Qishuang's room. Is the boss here to deliver food? She pushed Qishuang away from the door, followed the fragrance, and walked in by herself. Well, it was just delivered. You didn't have time to open the door, so he sent it to me. After closing the door, he turned around and shook his head helplessly, saying, I was just about to try it first. You knocked on the door. What a coincidence. Taking an empty tabler from the small table, Meditarumi selected a dish, tasted it, squinted her eyes and said, this tastes good. Her stomach suffered a lot in the years on the battlefield. Except for the soldiers' ration pills, there were only some simple meals. However, there was nothing she could do about it. During the war, it was good to have enough food, and no one had the energy to make any delicacies. Moreover, it was simply unrealistic to provide thousands of ninja troops with delicious food every day. The only thing that could satisfy her craving was when the team went on a mission and killed some wild game. Unfortunately, after years of war, in the last 2 years, the wild game within a radius of thousands of meters was almost wiped out. Now this meal is the most delicious meal she has eaten since she retired from the front line. Hey, how do you start investigating the whereabouts of those 3 guys? Meditarumi sat aside and asked while eating. You'll know tomorrow. Sitting opposite her, Qishuang picked up his chopsticks again and launched an offensive on the food on the small table. Seeing that he had no intention of revealing, Meditarumi was too lazy to make herself unhappy and concentrated on dealing with the food in front of her. The peaceful night passed quickly. After breakfast the next day, Qishuang took Meditarumi out. On the way, the little girl asked again, what's your plan? Are you going to find a needle in a haystack and check one by one? Qishuang said as she walked, with our intelligence network in Kirigakure, we must have closely monitored the places where those rebels had lived, so they can only flee to unfamiliar areas to avoid the risk of being found. And in an unfamiliar place, without real estate and acquaintances, they can't sleep on the streets unless it's in the wilderness. so they will definitely choose to stay in a hotel. As he said that, he took Meditarumi to stop in front of a hotel. So, you are going to check the accommodation records of various hotels? Meditarumi came to the conclusion immediately. That's right. Nanashi turned around and said to him with a smile, with our identity as Kirigakure ninjas, those shops should not dare to hide anything. As long as those 3 people are not wearing makupo disguises, it shouldn't take long to find them. Hearing this, Meditarumi pinched her chin and thought for a while, and then said, what if they are wearing makupo disguises, and no hotel can find their records? Nanashi, who had just taken a step, stopped immediately, sighed, and said, then we can only think of other ways. Then, he walked into the hotel in front of him. Knock, knock. Seeing that there was no one at the front desk, he knocked on the counter. Immediately, a short and fat man came out from the back room. Just like the old man who received them before, the short and fat man was very happy to see guests coming to the door, but after seeing their ninja forehead protectors, the other party's smile stiffened a lot. Two sirs, is there anything I can help you with? The boss asked the 2 men carefully, but his slightly trembling fat could not hide the fear in his heart. Seeing that the other party was so scared, Qishuang did not intend to be polite with him. He immediately took out 3 photos from his pocket, spread them on the counter and asked, have you seen these 3 people? That was his mission target. As early as when he left the village, he deliberately asked the photo studio to copy the photos of the 3 people on the scroll. It was for the convenience of taking it out and asking someone. After all, he couldn't show his mission scroll to others. Seeing that the Mist Ninja boy was young, but looked very difficult to mess with, the short and fat boss carefully took the 3 photos in his hand, and looked at them carefully. Looking at the photos, and then at the 2 people in front of the stage, he was hesitant to speak. Seeing his timid look, Qishuang was really impatient and frowned. I'm just asking you, have you seen these 3 people? If you have, say yes. If you haven't, say no. Don't waste my time. After that, he hammered the counter heavily. The sound was like thunder, which frightened the already nervous short and fat boss so much that he trembled, and even dropped the photo in his hand to the ground. Yes. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Seeing Qishuang suddenly furious, the short and fat boss was frightened and pale, and hurriedly bent down to pick up the photo on the ground. Unfortunately, he was a little fat, and it was really difficult for him to bend down. He tried several times, but couldn't bend down. Finally, his legs softened, and he lay down. However, the thin photo stuck to the ground was not easy to pick up. He was so nervous that his hands kept shaking, and he couldn't pick it up. He was so anxious that he almost cried. He could only carefully and anxiously take the photo while apologizing constantly. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Seeing his clumsy appearance, Qishuang was helpless, and Meditarumi beside him laughed so hard that she almost choked. The fat shop owner was lying on the ground like a meatball, and the anxious look of not being able to pick up the 3 photos really made her laugh. Hearing the silver bell like cheerful laughter, the short and fat boss on the ground also secretly breathed a sigh of relief. At least, the 2 Mist Ninja Masters were not angry, and should not cause trouble for him. After a long time, he finally picked up the 3 photos on the ground, dusted off the dust on them, and then carefully put them back on the counter. Qishuang shook his head helplessly, put the photos back in his pocket, and asked him again, have you seen these 3 people? No. No. The shop owner looked at him with great fear, and shrank his neck. Waste of time. Qishuang gave him a fierce look, then took Meditarumi's little hand, left the hotel very depressed, and set off for the next hotel. Congratulations to Moral Model for becoming the first Butler level fan of this book 2019.4.28. One more thing to add, this chapter has nothing to do with rewards. I just want to speed up the progress. So, don't have any weird ideas. Chapter 160 News. After running to 7 or 8 hotels, Qishuang and the others could not find any record of the 3 people. This made the 2 feel a little discouraged. The news of their search for someone also spread quickly, and many people in the town knew the purpose of the 2 Mist Ninjas coming here. In an alley, 2 housewives who were returning from shopping were walking and chatting. Hey, do you know? 2 Mist Ninjas came to our town yesterday. The tall woman whispered to her friend. I know. My husband told me last night that 2 Miss Ninjas came to the town and asked me to be careful when I meet them and not to annoy them. Another shorter woman said solemnly, carrying a basket of vegetables. Then do you know what they are planning to do in our town? The tall woman glanced around carefully and said to her companion in a slightly boastful tone. The short woman didn't think too much and asked excitedly, you know? Tell me, tell me. Although the Kirigakure ninjas were bloodthirsty and scary guys in their impression, they envied those people who possessed extraordinary powers. Just like ordinary people admire the power of gods, they also envied and longed for that extraordinary power. But not everyone is qualified to be a ninja. It requires a certain talent, foundation and training. Those who can't be ninjas can only talk about the deeds of ninjas in private as a topic of conversation to comfort themselves. Therefore, what they like most on weekdays is to talk about various ninja deeds. Therefore, the news that Kirigakure ninjas came to their town yesterday spread throughout the town in less than a day. The people in the town were both afraid and curious. I heard. Just as the tall woman was about to show off the news she had learned to her companions, a relatively strong young man came towards her. She immediately kept silent. The strong young man looked at the 2 people in surprise, but did not stop. He walked straight past the 2 people and disappeared around the corner. After the man disappeared, the tall woman said to her companions mysteriously, when I was buying vegetables earlier, I heard from the little sister next door to the cousin of Miyamoto, who sells meat, that the 2 Miss Ninjas came to our town to look for 3 people. The 2 women who were concentrating on talking about the ninjas did not notice that the sturdy young man who had just turned the corner appeared on a big tree beside their road. He was hanging upside down on the branch with only 2 feet, staring at the 2 people motionlessly. Obviously, it was a ninja. Who are they looking for? The short woman asked without noticing. Or, if a ninja was lurking next to ordinary people, they would not be able to detect it at all. The tall woman thought for a while and said uncertainly, it seems to be called something like tiger, something like bear, something like ua, just these 3 people. Although the news spread quickly, it was always passed on by word of mouth, and there were always omissions. When it came to her, she didn't even know the names of the 3 people. They only roughly knew that the 2 Miss Ninjas were looking for information about 3 people. The 2 did not notice that the moment they heard the 3 incomplete names, the right eyelid of the sturdy young man on the branch twitched a few times. After hearing what her companion said, the short woman sighed and said, those 3 people are probably criminals. Otherwise, the 2 Miss Ninjas wouldn't have to search for their whereabouts everywhere. Who said it wasn't? The tall woman patted her chest and said worriedly, anyone who is tracked down by the Miss Ninjas will not be a good person. They came to us to investigate, which means that the 3 people are hiding in our town. During this period, we have to be careful when we go out. Although the ninjas of the Mist Village made them feel afraid, they still knew that the Mist Ninjas were subject to great constraints and would not easily interfere with their lives. But those who were tracked down by the Mist Ninjas, that's hard to say. She couldn't help but worry. Yeah. The short woman nodded and then said, when I go home later, I will also tell my family not to go out at night. Watching the 2 people chattering around the corner and disappearing, the sturdy young man fell from under the tree. Stupid woman, you dare to chat with people behind you without even finding out their names. Looking at the direction where the 2 disappeared, he spat with great disdain. Then he muttered to himself, tiger, bear, hua. Don't these 3 incomplete names just correspond to our 3 brothers and sisters? Brother also said that the 2 Miss Ninjas coming here might be a coincidence and told us not to worry. This is not a coincidence at all. After saying that, he sneered, turned back along the way he came, and soon disappeared at the alley. On the other side, Qishuang took Terumi Medi to several more hotels, but still could not find the accommodation records of the 3 people. It seems that the 3 people should have disguised themselves with makup. Holding a glass of juice, Terumi Medi sighed while sitting on a chair on the street. The juice was bought by Qishuang when they passed by a beverage store. It was better to say that it was given by the store. The owner of the beverage store did not dare to take Qishuang's money and said that it was given to them for tasting. What are you going to do next? Terumi slowly lay on the back of the bench and asked lazily. After asking more than 10 hotels in a row, she was a little tired. Taking a sip of the juice in the cup and looking at the sign of the shop opposite, Qishuang said slowly, even if they are ninjas and have richer wealth than ordinary people, but staying in a hotel for a long time will easily arouse suspicion. From the information provided by the intelligence department, the last time they found the trace of those 3 people was about a month ago. It's been so long, the possibility that they are still living in the hotel is extremely low. Besides, I also asked those shop owners, and in the past month, they haven't had any guests staying here for more than a week. This means that they are not living in the hotel now. Hearing this, Meditarumi suddenly sat up and said in surprise, since you know that, why did you go to the hotel to check for their whereabouts? Isn't this a waste of effort? Qishuang turned her head and gave her a blank look and said, how can it be a waste of effort? Whether they live in the hotel or not, as long as I can find a little information, I can follow the clues and continue looking. It's much more convenient than looking for a needle in a haystack. Meditarumi curled her lips and said, but we didn't find any trace of them at all. It's a waste of effort, isn't it? Qishuang shook her head and smiled. I have ruled out the possibility that they are staying in the hotel, so I basically confirm another possibility, that they are hiding here. What possibility? Meditarumi asked hurriedly. If it were you, how would you solve the accommodation problem in the past month without staying in the hotel? Qishuang asked back with a smile. Chapter 161 3 Steps. HMM. Hearing this, the little girl immediately fell into deep thought. Qishuang saw this, but did not interrupt her rashly, just sat aside and waited quietly. Hiss, she was so absorbed in her thoughts that she came to her senses when she heard a hissing sound from the cup and her mouth lost its taste. The cup was empty. She casually threw it into a trash can next to her, pinching her chin and said, if it were me, I would probably find a house and rent it, or buy a property directly. It's not impossible to sleep on the street like a beggar, but the possibility is very small. As a girl, she would never choose to sleep on the street, unless it was absolutely necessary. The other 3 people were also from big families, not from poor families, and there was also a woman, so they would definitely not sleep on the street and suffer that kind of hardship. Right. Qishuang, who had also drained the juice, threw the cup into the trash can and said, house rental and real estate transactions are different from hotel accommodation. The turnover of people is not that great. We just need to investigate the rental and real estate transaction records in the town for the past month, and we should be able to find them soon. It's a good idea, but where do you find such records? It's different from an inn that is open for business. Terumi Mei shook her head. Qishuang smiled slightly and said confidently, after all, the 3 of them are outsiders. Whether they rent or buy a house, they are extremely conspicuous among the locals. I only need to ask a few natives, and I can find outsiders who rent or buy houses. That's true. Terumi Mei nodded. Suddenly, she seemed to think of something, and said in surprise, if we ask around like this, will the news leak out and alarm them? Lying on the bench, Qishuang waved her hand, looking at the sky and said, since we set foot in this town, we have attracted a lot of attention. Today, we have conducted a large-scale investigation in the hotel. The news has already leaked. As long as they are not deaf, they should have received the news that we are looking for them. Terumi Mei suddenly became anxious and said, then you still. Before she finished her words, she saw Qishuang waving her hand again and continued, the news leaked, which is also within my expectation. And for them, after hearing the intelligence we have obtained from the pursuit, there are only 3 steps left to go. As he spoke, he raised his first finger and said, one is to flee. They will flee before we find them. But in this way, the sudden disappearance of people will also expose their whereabouts, and we will not be completely empty-handed. He raised his second finger and said, the second is to stay still. If they are very confident in their hiding, they will hide in the dark, blend in with the natives, and continue to disguise themselves, hoping to avoid our investigation. But even if their appearance can be changed, their chakra cannot be changed. I can find them by just getting in close contact and testing them. The possibility of them continuing to hide is not high. With the third finger raised, Qishuang sat up straight, looked at the little girl and said solemnly, this third possibility is also the one I think is the most likely. What possibility? Terumi Mei immediately became interested. Fight back. Qishuang uttered the two words with a serious face. Fight back. Terumi Mei was suddenly startled and said, how dare they? No matter what, she couldn't figure out how 3 rebels could fight back. Why don't they dare? Nanashi glanced at the little girl jokingly and continued, if you were one of them, what would you think when you found that the pursuers were only 2 Miss Ninjas, both of whom were children at the level of Chunin? You know, it was the hidden mist village that wiped out your family and was preparing to catch you all in one fell swoop. Don't you have any hatred in your heart? Don't you even have the courage to take revenge? After hearing this, Terumi Mei was speechless. From the standpoints of both parties, the 3 members of the Snow Clan, who were the rebels, must have hated the Miss Ninjas who were chasing them. If they had the advantage in combat power, it would be fine. The 3 members of the Snow Clan would never dare to have any strange thoughts, and could only flee in panic. But now, they only have 2 people, both of whom are at the level of Chunin. Compared with the 3 Chunin on the other side, they do not have an advantage, and can even be said to be at a disadvantage. The thoughts of revenge are probably brewing. Looking at the palm he stretched out, Qishuang gently squeezed it and said confidently, I'm not afraid that they won't come. If they come, it's just right to catch them all in one fell swoop. It also saves me the effort of continuing to track them down. So, when you go to bed these few nights, don't sleep too deeply. I don't want 2 people to go out and 1 person to go back. As he said that, he solemnly glanced at the little girl next to him, his eyes full of reminders. Got it. After listening to his flawless analysis, Terumi Mei felt a deep sense of frustration, but there was no way to refute it. She could only pout and respond very unhappily. Let's go back. Qishuang stood up, smiled at her, and then walked towards the direction of the hotel where she was staying. Terumi Mei, who was tired all day, had no objection to this. It was much more comfortable to lie down in the hotel than to run around outside. Just as they were leaving, a young woman came towards them and passed by them. After taking another deep look at the 2 of them, the young woman turned around and left. On the other side, the sturdy young man who heard the 2 women talking entered a house. Zhuxiang, you are back so soon. In the courtyard, a man with a scar on his face shouted to him from a distance. Seeing him calling, the sturdy young man hurried forward and said anxiously, Brother Zuhu, something big has happened. What's the matter? So urgent? The scarred man called Zuhu asked him with a smile. Zhuxiang said to him seriously, I just went to the street to inquire about the situation and heard that the residents in the town were talking about the news that the 2 Miss Ninjas came here to track down 3 people. And the target they are tracking is us 3 brothers and sisters. It's not what you guessed at the beginning. It's just a coincidence that they came here. After hearing the 3 incomplete names from the 2 women earlier, he deliberately asked other people again, and then confirmed the real name of the target that the 2 Miss Ninjas were tracking. It was Zuhu, Zhuxiang, and Zuhua, the 3 brothers and sisters. Sure enough, they still found here? Zuhu sighed, extremely helpless. After the failed coup, the huge Snow Clan fell apart in the face of the crackdown by the hidden mist village. The 3 brothers and sisters fled and hid again. It wasn't long before they were found again. It really made him feel a little tired. At this moment, a young woman hurriedly walked in at the gate of the compound. Chapter 162 3 people. Zuhu, pack your bags quickly, we are ready to leave now. Zuhu said to the young woman who had just walked into the yard. That was his and Zuxiang's sister. Are you in such a hurry, big brother? Zuxiang, who was standing next to him, was stunned for a moment and asked hurriedly. Sitting down on a chair next to him, Zuhu said to the 2 of them solemnly, don't underestimate the hidden mist village. We were all ninjas from there. Since they have locked onto this town, it won't take too much time to find out our specific location. Instead of waiting until they are completely surrounded, we might as well leave now. It can also reduce everyone's danger. Okay then. Zuxiang scratched his head, responded very reluctantly, and turned around to go back to the house to pack up. According to his personality, he was unwilling to leave in such a humiliated way, but since his big brother Zuhu said so, he had nothing to say. After all, his big brother was also thinking about everyone's safety. Wait. The pretty lady who had just entered the door stopped Zukshin, who was turning around. "Why, little sister, do you have anything else to say?" Zuhu asked in surprise. Zuhu pulled out a chair, smoothed her skirt, sat down, and said to the sturdy young man, "Zukshin, don't rush to pack up. I have good news to tell you." "Oh." Zukshin pulled out a chair doubtfully and sat next to Zuhu. He was looking forward to the good news that his younger sister said. "When I went out on the street earlier, I deliberately observed the two Miss Ninjas closely," Zuhu said to the two of them solemnly. Hearing this, Zuhu immediately reprimanded, "Zuhu, how could you do such a dangerous thing? If they recognize your identity, you will be in danger." "Don't worry, big brother." Before approaching them, I used the transformation technique to change my appearance and didn't let them see my true appearance, Zuhu replied proudly. "That's good." The two brothers breathed a sigh of relief. "Little sister, you called me. What good news do you have to tell me?" Zukshin asked impatiently. Zuhu smiled confidently and said, "When brother Zuhu sent us out to gather information, I carefully asked the villagers. They said that only two Miss Ninjas came to the town. Then, in order to verify their statement, I deliberately found the two people and observed them from a distance. I found that there were indeed only two people, and they were not followed by other Miss Ninjas." Zuhu shook his head and said impatiently, "What good news is this? You and Zuziang should pack up quickly. We will leave quietly after dark." "Brother, don't be impatient. I haven't finished what I said yet." Zuhu smiled and continued, "Didn't I say before that I used the transformation technique to observe the two of them closely? So what? It's just a waste of effort." Zuhu sighed. "How can it be a waste of effort? I risked my life to find something very interesting," Zuhu said with a smile. "What did you find?" Zuziang asked hurriedly. Zuhu showed a meaningful smile on her face and whispered, "I found that their chakra aura is probably at the level of Chunin." "Two Chunins?" Zuhu was also surprised. Then, some strange thoughts immediately appeared in his heart. As soon as the thought sprouted, he quickly cut it off and said solemnly to his little sister, "How could it be Chunin? Could it be a false impression created by them? The Kirigakure intelligence department must know that the three of us are also at the level of Chunin, so why would they send only two Chunins to hunt us down? With the strength of the three of them as Chunins, if the pursuers did not have the advantage of strength, they should have the advantage of numbers. However, there were only two people coming, and there was no advantage in numbers at all. What's more, their chakra aura was only at the level of Chunin. This really made it hard for him to believe that the Kirigakure village would send such people to hunt them down. He was more willing to believe that the two people deliberately suppressed their auras, causing others to misjudge their strength. Zuhu shook her head and replied, "I thought so earlier. But when I saw that they were not very old, only about 13 or 14 years old, I didn't have such doubts." 13 or 14 years old? Zuhu was shocked again and began to calculate silently. Zuziang on the other side was puzzled after hearing this and asked with a shameless face, "Sister Zuhu, what do you mean by this?" Zuhu rolled his eyes at him and said, "Brother Zuziang, have you ever seen a young ninja with the strength of a Jonin at this age?" No. Zuziang waved his hands and said, "I only heard that there is a 12-year-old genius Jonin in Konoha, known as Sharingan Kakashi. In our Kirigakure, we have never seen such a young Jonin." Zuhu rubbed his forehead and continued, "Isn't that right? The two Kirigakure ninjas who came to hunt us are too young, and the possibility of them having the strength of a Jonin is very small. Chunin level, for sure." On the other side, Zuhu, who had thought about it in his mind, said, "Since they are only at the Chunin level, don't blame us for being rude. It's just, I'm a little worried that those two are the bait used by the Kirigakure to lure us to show up," Zuhu said with a little concern. Facing two Chunin level Kirigakure ninjas, even if they have the advantage in numbers, they are not opponents that can be defeated in a short time. If the opponent is Kirigakure, to lure them out as bait, and has already laid an ambush outside the town, it will be difficult for them to escape by then. Zuhu waved his hand and said, "Don't worry, I have prepared a response strategy. You two go pack your bags now, and we will kill those two damn Kirigakure ninjas tonight. Use their blood to commemorate the heroic spirits of the Snow Clan." Whether it succeeds or not, we must leave here tonight. Otherwise, once they confirm our whereabouts, the pursuers behind us will only increase in number. Seeing his confident look, Zuhua breathed a sigh of relief and whispered, "Since Big Brother has said so, I will go down and prepare now." Then, Zuxian followed and left. On the other side, Qishuang and the other person returned to the hotel, had a nice dinner, and then went back to their rooms to rest. At midnight, with the moon in the sky, two dark figures leaped through the houses and soon arrived at the hotel, where Qishuang and his partner were staying. Crash. With the sound of the glass window breaking, Qishuang, who was resting on the bed, opened his eyes immediately, because he heard the sound of some sharp weapon breaking through the air mixed with the sound of the glass breaking. It was the sound he was very familiar with, the sound of the shuriken rubbing against the air when it was fired rapidly. It's an enemy attack. He was already on guard and got out of bed without hesitation. Knock knock. Turning his head again, he saw several dark kunai hitting the bed where he had just rested. Are they really here? Looking at the kunai on the bed, a confident smile appeared on his face. At this time and place, the identity of the attackers was about to be revealed. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 163 Raid. The enemy who suddenly attacked him was most likely the rebel of the Snow Clan that he was hunting down. It's not okay to be trapped in the house like this, he thought silently while looking at the kunai on the bed. The enemy was outside, and he was inside, completely unable to move his hands and feet and unable to launch an effective counterattack. Then, he pulled a chair from the bedside, wrapped it with a quilt, and threw it out at the window. Bang! Another crisp sound came, and the glass window that had been punched with several holes by the kunai was completely shattered by him hitting it with the chair. Even the window frame was not left, and the chair wrapped in the quilt flew out together. Thump thump thump. The sound of breaking through the air followed, and several more kunai penetrated the quilt and nailed to the chair. Hearing this sound, Qishuang, who was hiding in the shadow of the quilt and the chair and rushed out, had a mocking look on his face. The enemy came prepared. If he rushed out so recklessly, he would definitely be attacked by concentrated fire. Therefore, he wrapped the chair with a quilt and made a simple shelter to attract fire. Now it seems that this effort was not in vain. Although he had enough confidence to face the three guys from the Snow Clan, it never hurts to be cautious. He finally survived the difficult war life, and he didn't want to capsize in the gutter. Be careful, that's not the real target. In the shadow of the street corner, someone shouted, and the sound of ninja tools hitting the chair stopped immediately. Qishuang calmly got out from behind the chair and landed on the wide street. Before he could find the enemy's position, another cry came from the hotel behind him. Get out. It was the voice of Meditarumi. Then, there was another sound of broken glass, and two figures, one big and one small, flew out of the broken glass window one after another. However, after taking a closer look, he found that the bigger figure seemed to be at a disadvantage, and was hit from the inside and flew out. The smaller figure looked very familiar to him. It was Meditarumi. Obviously, the larger figure was the enemy. He just didn't know how the other party sneaked into Meditarumi's room. Dissolving style, dissolving monster technique. Meditarumi, who had chased him forcefully, seemed a little angry. Before she landed in midair, she quickly formed a set of hand seals, puffed up her cheeks, and spit a mouthful of milky white mucus at the enemy in front of her. Qishuang thought about it, and felt that it was understandable. After all, a girl was suddenly broken into her private room by a stranger in the middle of the night. If she said she was not angry, no one would believe it. At the moment, he could only pray that Meditarumi would leave that guy with an intact body. Ice style, ice armor technique. Facing the unknown milky white mucus, the man did not dare to be careless, and quickly formed a set of hand seals, and performed a technique the moment he landed. Suddenly, a layer of translucent crystal armor appeared on his body, which protected the milky white mucus tightly in the moment it approached. Although there was a distance between them, the cold breath exuded from the crystal armor at the moment the opponent cast the spell. Qishuang still recognized the essence of the crystal armor. It was the breath of ice that he was very familiar with. The opponent used ice escape. The identity of the attacking enemy was finally confirmed. It was the 3 siblings of the Snow Clan that he was chasing. After all, although there were many remnants of the Snow Clan, it was not so lucky for him to run into anyone other than the target. Where are you looking? Not paying attention can cost you your life. With a teasing voice coming from far away, a scarred young man in a white robe rushed to Qishuang by using the flash body technique. Then he aimed the sharp kunai in his hand at Qishuang's throat and slashed it. Unexpectedly, the boy who was absent-minded in his eyes suddenly raised the kunai and blocked his attack appropriately. Ding. The crisp sound of 2 kunai clashing echoed in the empty street. At the same time, with the bright moonlight, Qishuang also saw the appearance of the person coming. It was Zuhu, one of the 3 siblings of the Snow Clan on his mission list. He was a young man with a long scar on his face. The handsome face that was not completely covered by the scar was a little distorted because of the murderous intent, and the 2 eyes were locked on him coldly, as if looking at a corpse. That was a poor man bound by hatred. Even so, Qishuang had no intention of letting the other party go. He needed to use their blood to draw a clear line between him and the Snow Clan. Then, with a hint of sarcasm, he forced the other party's kunai away and kicked him straight with a whip kick. Do you think I really haven't defended you? The so-called loss of consciousness was just a flaw he deliberately revealed to the other party in order to draw it out and save him the trouble of slowly finding it. Besides, he had been in the battlefield for more than 3 years. How could he not know the principle of being cautious when facing the enemy? Even if he was distracted by the situation on Meditarumi's side, he never relaxed his own guard. From the beginning, the opponent's sneak attack was doomed to fail. Boom. Zuhu was not discouraged by the failure of the sneak attack. He didn't expect to kill the opponent so easily. Instead, he adjusted his mentality very quickly, crossed his arms, and blocked the whip kick that swept in. It was just because the defense was too hasty that his heels were unstable, and he was knocked back several meters by the opponent's leg force before he stopped completely. On the other side, the person who was knocked out of the window by Meditarumi was the most sturdy of the 3 siblings, Qishuang. He couldn't dodge in time and was poured with an inexplicable milky white mucus by the opponent. Fortunately, he used ice escape in time to create a solid ice armor, so he didn't come into direct contact with it. However, before he could be happy, he found that something was wrong with the ice armor that was attached with milky white mucus. His ice armor, which was as strong as steel, was corroded by the milky white mucus and was slowly melting. Break the armor. Without thinking too much, he shouted and shattered the ice armor on his body. The broken ice, along with his chakra burst, immediately shot out in all directions. The milky white mucus that was originally attached to it also flew around with the ice, and he completely got rid of it. In an instant, the flying broken ice, mixed with Terumi Mena's dissolving mucus, formed a dangerous storm, covering Qishuang and the other person not far away. As a last resort, the 2 did not dare to continue to entangle and immediately retreated to avoid the indiscriminate attack. Pa pa pa. The broken ice wrapped in mucus hit the surrounding walls, making a dense, crisp, shattering sound, completely breaking the tranquility of the night. Many windows of the houses along the street lit up. Someone was awakened by the continuous noise and was about to turn on the light to see what was going on. Who is here so late at night? A man not far away leaned half of his body out of the window and was about to curse. After seeing the identities of the 4 ninjas confronting each other on the street, he immediately covered his mouth, quickly closed the window, and disappeared. The windows around him that had just lit up also darkened again one by one. Chapter 164 Fight. No one wanted to get involved in a fight between ninjas. For ordinary people, it was a complete disaster. People awakened by the fight closed their doors and windows, anxiously waiting for the fight to end. There were also some curious fearless guys who quietly lay behind the window after turning off the lights and peeked at the 4 people on the street in the moonlight outside. Avoiding the storm of broken ice mixed with the molten slime, Qishuang loudly asked Terumi Medi on the other side, "Are you okay?" "No problem." Terumi Medi slowly walked out of the shadow of a shop, staring closely at the sturdy young man in the middle of the street, and said angrily, "This big guy suddenly knocked open my door and scared me. I'm going to deal with him." Seeing her voice full of energy, Qishuang breathed a sigh of relief and reminded, "Be careful, there should be 3 of them, but there are only 2 here. There is another one who is probably hiding around, ready to attack at any time. Don't fall for it." The sturdy guy was obviously a snow bear. 2 of the 3 men had already appeared, and the other woman was missing. He didn't think that the other party had left the 2 brothers and escaped. It is more likely that he was lying in ambush around. "Oh, got it." Terumi Mei stared at the opponent on the street and responded softly. She has been using the melting escape for a while. With the strong corrosiveness and stickiness of the melting escape slime, anyone who is hit by this move will have no chance of survival. They can only be stuck in the melting escape slime, watching their bodies being dissolved bit by the strong corrosiveness of the slime, and slowly die in pain and despair. But it is the first time I have seen someone who has escaped death by being wrapped in her melting escape slime like this person in front of me, and I can't help but feel a little more curious. Of course, the other party was able to get rid of her melting escape slime, in addition to her proper handling method, and also because her slime did not solidify quickly. In addition to the corrosive and sticky properties of her melting escape, it also has the property of solidification. Once solidified, it can form an extremely hard substance with a strength comparable to concrete. It is definitely not something that can be easily broken by ordinary force. However, once the slime solidifies, it will lose its corrosive and sticky properties, and cannot cause fatal damage to the enemy. This is why she rarely controls the slime to solidify quickly. As the saying goes, there is gain and loss, and this is it. "Zuziang, are you okay?" After avoiding the ice storm, Zuhu also asked his brother with concern. Facing the crackdown of the Hidden Mist village, the tribesmen were scattered and lost contact. At present, he only had these 2 relatives around him. He never wanted to see them get into trouble again. "Don't worry, big brother." Zuziang patted his chest and replied in a muffled voice, "I used the ice armor just now to protect my whole body. It's okay. It's just that the milky white mucus spit out by the girl is very dangerous and has a strong corrosiveness. If I move slower, the mucus may have corroded my ice armor and directly corroded my body. Remember to be careful too." As he said, he looked at Terumi with a little more fear. "Okay, I remember." Zuhu nodded and slowly formed a set of hand seals. Then, after the change of ice attribute, chakra came out from his palm and condensed into a huge shuriken that could cover half of his body. Ice release, ice shuriken. Then he took a step forward, aimed at the mist ninja boy opposite, and threw out the solid ice shuriken. Seeing the huge shuriken flying towards him, Qishuang immediately jumped onto the roof and avoided the flight path of the shuriken. "It's not that easy to hide." Zuhu sneered and immediately triggered a trace of chakra reserved in the huge shuriken. Explode. When Qishuang just landed on the roof, the solid ice shuriken suddenly exploded. The scattered ice fragments were like shotguns, immediately covering the area within a radius of 5 meters, hitting the surrounding walls and making a loud noise. Even the glass windows on the surrounding walls were not spared, and many of them crackled. The people in the house screamed in shock. Qishuang, who was unable to dodge, had to fall on the roof to reduce the force surface of the broken ice hitting him. Even so, the broken ice that was shot at him still made him grimace in pain. After all, the edges of the broken ice were jagged, and piercing into the flesh was no different from a needle. "Go to hell, kid." Just as the blast of broken ice stopped, a figure jumped onto the roof of the room where he was and threw several kunai at him from a distance. It was Zuhu who took advantage of the situation to catch up. He didn't have time to get up, so he rolled over, and the kunai flew by his clothes and hit him immediately. He took advantage of the situation to roll over and fall off the eaves, returning to the ground again. On the roof, Zuhu, who missed the attack, did not give up the advantage of attacking. He formed a set of hand seals again. Ice attribute chakra quickly condensed at his feet, and then a nearly 1 meter tall, majestic ice tiger appeared next to him. Ice release, ice tiger technique. Under the moonlight, the ice sculpture tiger, under the control of Zuhu, seemed to come alive, opened its huge mouth, and let out a silent roar at Qishuang on the ground. Then he kicked his forelegs and pounced down. Seeing this, Qishuang shook his head slightly, with great disdain in his heart. It was just changing the ice into a tiger form, which was essentially not much different from the ice shuriken just now. It was just that, because this tiger had 4 legs, and was controlled by the caster in real time, it seemed more flexible. There was nothing that made him feel bright. This made him feel disappointed as he wanted to peek at the Snow Clan's ninjutsu. Because there was no family inheritance, and no teacher who could teach him how to use Ice Escape, all his Ice Escape ninjutsu were created by himself. Therefore, when he received the task of hunting down the Snow Clan's rebels, he not only did not resist at all, but was even very happy. The purpose was to learn something useful from the Snow Clan who also used Ice Escape. But judging from the current situation, the Snow Tiger's use of Ice Escape was not better than his, and there was nothing that made him feel bright. Maybe he hasn't used his full strength yet? Qishuang thought so, and quickly formed a set of hand seals. Ice Escape, Ice Wall technique. Ice attributed chakra poured out of his body and quickly condensed in front of him, and then a 3-foot thick ice wall appeared in front of him, blocking the Ice Tiger's attack path. The Ice Tiger swooped down from the roof, in midair, and had not yet landed. There was nothing under its feet to support it, so it had no way to dodge the ice wall that suddenly blocked its way. There was only a loud bang, and it crashed into it. Chapter 165 Bloodline. The ice wall did not move at all, but the Ice Tiger smashed half of its body, turned into a pile of broken ice, and fell under the ice wall. Nothing more. Seeing this, Qishuang shook his head. The opponent transformed the ice into a tiger form and manipulated it, which looked majestic and more flexible in attack, but the structure of the Ice Tiger itself was not special, and the hardness of its own ice cubes was not qualitatively improved. Compared with his ice wall, its hardness was obviously much worse, and this result also proved that the path he chose earlier was not wrong. In-depth research on the changes in the properties of ice can make his ice harder and more freezing. The difference in the strength of the ice cubes made by the two also made the fancy moves of the Snow Tiger meaningless in front of his extra hard ice wall, and the difference was immediately determined. On the other side, seeing his sudden Ice Escape ninjutsu, the Snow Tiger on the roof was also shocked, and even didn't care that his own Ice Tiger was smashed, and the attack was invalid. How can you Ice Escape? He pointed at the boy on the ground, and asked in surprise. Qishuang brushed off the dust on his body and said nonchalantly, your Snow Clan is famous for Ice Escape, but you are not the only one in the world who can use Ice Escape. Why, are you really so surprised to meet a foreigner like me who can use Ice Escape? As he spoke, there was a hint of sarcasm in his tone. Standing on the roof, looking down at the boy, Zuhu said righteously, we have no right to control the Ice Escape ninjas from other countries, but the Ice Escape of the water country is undoubtedly all from our Snow Clan. Although I have never seen you in the clan, and don't know where you came from, the Ice Escape bloodline flowing in your body, tracing its roots, must be from our clan. It is the bloodline of our Snow Clan that has been lost. At this moment, Qishuang interrupted him and said disdainfully, so what? It's just a distant relative who knows how many generations have passed. Do you still want to order me in the name of the orthodox bloodline? As he spoke, there was a hint of mockery and contempt on his face. Having been influenced by modern civilization in his previous life, he was not interested in this ancient clan system, and did not have the awe of the aboriginals. The so-called orthodox and side branches were meaningless in his eyes. They were just strangers with a trace of blood relationship. Upon hearing this, Zuhu's face darkened, and he frowned and said, have you never thought about returning to the Snow Clan, and sharing the glory of the Snow Clan? He originally thought that, by bringing up the banner of bloodline, he could bring the two closer. With the name of the Snow Clan, he would let this lowly side branch, who had been separated for who knows how many generations, come up to him and command him. By the way, he would add fresh blood to the Snow Clan, which was on the verge of extinction. Unexpectedly, the other party did not care about the orthodoxy of the Snow Clan, and treated the things he cherished most as nothing. This really surprised him. Return. Glory? Qishuang looked at him jokingly and sarcastically said, where were you when I was wandering the streets? Where were you when I couldn't get enough food? You can even say that you never knew I existed. And now that you see me and need me, you want me to return in the name of bloodline. Don't you think you are shameless? You never helped me, or even looked at me. I have nothing to do with your Zoo clan except for a little bit of intergenerational blood relationship. As he said that, he pinched his index finger and thumb, and gestured to show how much that so-called little bit was. Hearing this, Zuhu's face became even uglier. As for glory, Qishuang sneered twice and continued, what kind of glory can you guys, who are like stray dogs, have to talk about? Today, the Snow Clan is nothing more than a ship that is about to capsize. I don't want to die with you. The top leaders of Kirigakure have already issued a death order for this rebellion, and no one who is related to it can escape. The decline of the Snow Clan is a foregone conclusion, and cannot be changed. Unless he is crazy, he will not board this ship that is destined to sink. You are looking for death. Hearing that he despised the Snow Clan so much, Zuhu could no longer suppress his anger and murderous intent, and immediately formed a group of hand seals. 5 half-foot long ice cones appeared beside him. Ice escape, ice cone technique. Standing on the roof, he waved his hand, and the ice cone suspended beside him shot directly at the boy behind the ice wall below. Seeing this, Qishuang pressed his right hand on the ice wall in front of him, and pulled it outward. A 3-foot long ice blade was pulled out of the ice wall. This is the most basic chakra form change, without too many complicated special structures in it. As long as he wants, he can turn the ice blocks cut from the ice wall into any other form, such as ice swords, ice spears, ice shields, etc. The ice blade is just something he is more comfortable with. Bang, bang, bang. With the ice blade in his hand, he casually smashed several ice cones that shot at him, and the broken ice was scattered all over the ground at his feet. If your attack is just like this, then you can't leave tonight. Qishuang stepped on the ground and rushed to the roof again with the ice blade. Damn it. Seeing this, Zuhu was anxious and angry, and immediately performed another ninjutsu, and an ice tiger almost as tall as him appeared next to him again. I saw its front legs slightly bent, and its hind legs suddenly kicked, breaking the tiles on the roof, causing a few exclamations from the room below, and it pounced on the boy who had just climbed onto the roof. Boring moves. Qishuang shook her head slightly. The speed of the ice tiger was extremely fast, or the distance between them was not far, and it was in front of him in the blink of an eye. Qishuang slightly turned sideways, and at the moment of avoiding the ice tiger's attack, the ice blade in his right hand was aimed at the waist and abdomen, and suddenly slashed from bottom to top. In an instant, it was cut in half. There was a loud bang, and the two halves of the ice tiger slid a short distance on the roof due to inertia, and then fell completely, unable to move anymore. The ice tiger, which was still majestic a moment ago, turned into 2 ice sculptures on the ground the next moment. It was a pity that the ice sculpture, which looked like a work of art, was cut in half by Qishuang. Go to hell. With a roar, Zuhu took advantage of the cover of the magic, and rushed forward with a kunai. Clang. Qishuang calmly blocked the opponent's attack with the ice blade in his hand. The dark kunai hit his ice blade, making a sound like steel hitting steel. If he hadn't clearly seen a gap on his ice blade where it collided with the opponent's kunai, he would have thought that the ice he made was harder than fine iron. Chapter 166 Ice Explosion. Swoosh. Hearing the sound of a weapon breaking through the air from behind, Qishuang slightly turned sideways to relieve the force exerted by the opponent on his ice blade, and then rushed out with a few steps. Kaka. Just as his front foot left, several dark kunai smashed the tiles and nailed him to the place where he had just landed. Looking back, he found that there was a pretty young woman next to Zuhu. With the help of the moonlight, Qishuang saw the other party's face clearly, which was exactly the same as the photo of Zuhu on his mission scroll. The third person hiding in the surroundings finally appeared. On the other side, the snow bear who was confronting Terumi Medi once again covered his body with ice attribute chakra, forming a set of ice armor to launch a close-range attack on the opponent. Boom. Terumi Medi easily avoided the opponent's attack. The fist wrapped in ice hit the ground, immediately breaking the road surface, shaking off the gravel, and creating a basin-sized pit. Big stupid bear. Medi Terumi slipped behind the opponent, made a face, and laughed triumphantly. With your slow movements, you can't touch me at all. The snow bear was very strong, and it was obvious that he was not the type of person who was agile. In addition, he was wearing a layer of ice armor, which made him look even more majestic and unstoppable. But this was the result of the opponent sacrificing speed. In exchange for the power of attack, the flexibility of his movements naturally decreased. In this state, it was simply a pipe dream for the opponent to hit her, who was petite and more flexible. That's not necessarily true. The snow bear pulled his fist out of the ground, looked at the little girl very calmly, and quickly formed a set of hand seals, before slapping the ground with one palm. Ice release. Cage, sensing that the opponent had dispersed a large amount of chakra, Terumi felt something was wrong. Just as she was about to step back, she noticed that there was an icy air in the air around her. She was often with Qishuang, so of course she understood that this was a sign that the opponent would launch a large-scale ice release technique. Then, she saw a circular ice wall suddenly rising up from the edge of the battlefield between the two. The ice wall grew rapidly from the periphery to the top in the middle, and in just a moment, it closed at the top in the middle, like an inverted ice bowl, trapping the two inside. This way, you can't escape. Snow Bear, wearing ice armor, panted. It is not easy to perform a large-scale ice escape ninjutsu in a place without a water source. This move alone directly consumed nearly half of his chakra. If it were not for limiting the opponent's ability to move and increasing his own attack hits, he would not be willing to waste chakra like this. Hearing this, Terumi lifted her hair and said nonchalantly, "So what if you can't escape? Don't you think you can defeat me by trapping me in here?" Naive. As she said this, she glanced at her opponent with great contempt. "Let me try and know, won't you?" Snow Bear replied in a muffled voice, pressing his hand on the ice wall next to him, and slowly pulling out a popsicle in his hand. Then he broke the road with his foot, and rushed over with the popsicle. Although her range of movement was limited to an area of only a few meters, Terumi still did not give up dodging, and planned to fight her opponent head-on. Strength and physical skills were not her strong points. Then, she retreated a few steps along the wall, and sprayed a mouthful of dissolving mucus at her opponent. "I'm waiting for you." Seeing the milky white mucus attacking again, the snow bear who was chasing behind flashed a strange color on his face, and instantly threw the popsicle in his hand, and quickly made a few seals. Ice release. Ice explosion. At the moment when the popsicle came into contact with the milky white mucus, he controlled the chakra reserved in the popsicle, and caused an explosion. The explosion of the popsicle blew up the cotton-like milky white mucus barrier, and the broken ice chips wrapped with a lot of mucus splashed indiscriminately around. Originally, she was curious about why the opponent threw away the weapon in his hand, but after seeing this scene, Terumi no longer had any questions. This was very similar to the opponent's earlier method of blasting the ice armor. This was an attack method that used ice explosions to scatter broken ice and increase the killing range. However, because the broken ice was now wrapped with some of her dissolving escape mucus, the killing power was qualitatively improved, and she did not dare to underestimate it. Dissolving escape, dissolving monster technique. Seeing that she could not completely avoid the scattered broken ice, she had to spit out a mouthful of mucus again, and spread it in front of her like a pancake, forming a barrier to block the blasting broken ice on the other side. Fortunately, because the scattered broken ice had consumed a lot of impact force when she blasted her first dissolving escape barrier, after shooting at her second dissolving escape barrier, the impact momentum was greatly weakened, and it could not penetrate a second barrier at all. All she could hear was the scattered broken ice hitting the surrounding ice walls, making a clattering sound. On the other side, the snow bear who was chasing closely behind saw the little girl use the second slime barrier, and sneered and pulled out another popsicle from the ice wall, and rushed up against the scattered ice. With the protection of the ice armor on his body, the impact of the broken ice was meaningless to him. Even if there was a lot of that kind of highly corrosive strange slime on it, he was not worried at all. But after all, the amount was too small to corrode his armor. Then, taking advantage of the opportunity, when the slime barrier blocked the two people's sight, he poked the popsicle into the barrier. What? Seeing a piece of popsicle suddenly sticking out of the barrier, Terumi was immediately surprised. She didn't expect that the other party would have such a big courage to rush up against the scattered ice to attack again. There is no doubt that this is going to repeat the same trick. Then, the other side of the dissolving barrier came the undisguised proud voice of the snow bear. Ice escape, ice explosion, bang. The barrier was pierced, and the popsicle, which was corroded by the slime and became thinner, exploded again under the control of the snow bear's chakra. But this time, Snow Bear did not see the expected scene of the barrier exploding, and the ice fragments flying around with mucus. Only his popsicle was shattered. But the milky white mucus barrier stood firmly on the ground, motionless. There was only a small round hole in the middle of the barrier. How could this happen? With full of doubts, he suddenly punched it. However, this time, what he felt was not the soft and sticky feeling he had imagined, but a hard feeling like iron. He felt like he was hitting a milky white wall. What's more terrifying is that the hardness of this wall is a few points harder than his ice. Because when he punched it, the ice armor covering his fist was shattered. In this way, he finally understood that the milky white mucus also had the property of rapid solidification. After solidification, the mucus had a stronger hardness than his ice. He finally got the answer to why the ice explosion just now failed to blow it up. Why are there so few people voting for recommendations? It would be fine if everyone could give me one vote. I have been writing for so long, but the number of recommended votes per day is less than 100, so miserable. Chapter 167 Evacuation. On the other side of the barrier, Meditarumi saw her clothes scratched by the broken ice and the blood on her arms, and she felt an aimless fire in her heart. In order to avoid being accidentally injured by the splashing slime, she solidified the slime barrier at the moment when the popsicle was poked into the barrier, but because of this, she was attacked by the ice at a very close distance. Although she was not seriously injured, she was left with a lot of bloodstains. For a girl who loves beauty, getting injured means leaving scars. When she thought that she might be covered in scars in the future, she could no longer suppress the murderous intent in her heart, and she couldn't wait to pinch to death the bastard who made her covered in scars. Go to hell, you stupid bear. She was so angry that she immediately spit out slime at the other side of the barrier again, but this time she was furious and didn't spit it out only a little bit like before. The milky white mucus that continuously flowed out of her mouth soon formed an overwhelming wave, and with an irresistible momentum, it rushed towards a sturdy young man wearing ice armor on the other side. Looking at the milky white waves rushing like waves, the snow bear was also surprised. He didn't expect that there was such a great energy in the girl's small body, that she could produce so much mucus at one time. Hide. Seeing this scene, he immediately chose to avoid her. Although the ice he made could temporarily block the erosion of mucus, such a large amount of mucus rushed together. Once he was trapped, he would have nowhere to escape until the ice was corroded. Then, he hurriedly retreated. The milky white waves followed closely behind him, with no intention of letting him go. Along the way, wisps of green smoke rose from the ground, which was the erosion of the stone slabs on the road. Boom. The snow bear retreated again and again, and unknowingly hit the ice wall. He had nowhere to retreat. The range of the cage was not very large, only a few meters in radius. In order to trap the enemy and create a favorable battlefield for himself who was a little slower in action. But at this moment, this battlefield that was favorable to him trapped him instead, and was used by the enemy, and became his own death warrant. If he had not experienced it himself, he would not have believed that such a thing would happen. Helplessly, he had to climb up along the ice wall to temporarily avoid the invasion of milky white waves. Hiss. As soon as he climbed up the ice wall, the milky white mucus filled the base of the wall. With a strange hissing sound, he saw wisps of green smoke rising from the place where the ice wall and the mucus came into contact. He knew that it was the mucus's powerful corrosive ability that was melting the battlefield he had worked so hard to arrange. Not good. With so much mucus gathering, I'm afraid it won't take long for my ice wall to be completely broken by it. Seeing the ice wall gradually melting, he couldn't help but get anxious. He no longer had any extra chakra to cast the cage again. Once the ice wall was destroyed, he would not be able to catch up with the little girl at his speed. In addition, he was not good at long-range attack techniques. Not only would he not be able to do anything to the other party, but he might even be killed by the other party at a distance. Thinking of this, He glanced at the ice wall that looked like a giant bowl on the ground and immediately made a decision in his heart, silently gathering chakra in his hands. On the other side, Zuhu whispered to the young woman next to him, "Are you sure there are no ambushes outside the town?" "Yes." Zuhu nodded and whispered, "I have been guarding the entrance of the town for a long time, and I didn't find any signs of other mist ninja activities. I think it's only these two furry kids who are chasing us this time." In order to prevent the three of them from being lured into the enemy's trap, the brothers and sisters had already made a division of labor. Zuhu and Zuxian took the lead to test, while Zuhu hid in the dark to be on guard. Once they found signs of other mist ninja activities, the three would choose to retreat without hesitation. After all, facing the huge mist village, their power is still too small. Only escape is the only way for them to survive. The two did not deliberately conceal their conversation. Qishuang heard it clearly from a distance. He finally understood why Zuhu, one of the three siblings, did not show up earlier. It turned out that she was on the lookout to prevent them from setting an ambush. "That's good." Zuhu stared at the boy not far away and said slowly, "Let's kill this kid first, and then deal with the one below." As he said that, he glanced at the huge ice bowl in the middle of the street without leaving a trace. Inside, there was another pursuer fighting with Zuxian. "What's the matter with that kid? Why have I never seen him in the clan?" Zuhu, who had just joined the battlefield, also noticed the ice blade in the boy's hand. There is no doubt that the opponent is also an ice escape blood limit ninja. Hearing this, Zuhu said with an unpleasant expression, "It is probably a branch of the bloodline that was lost outside. Since it is a branch of our clan, didn't you try to win him over? One more person means more strength." Zuhu asked him in surprise, with a serious look on his face. Zuhu was cautiously on guard against the boy opposite him, and said helplessly, "I have tried it, but he refused to return to the Zu clan, and I have no way. Why not let me try again?" Zuhu suggested. Hearing this, Qishuang felt annoyed. He really didn't understand where these two guys who were chased by the Kirigakure like stray dogs got their mysterious confidence from. After being rejected once, they still wanted to recruit him. Is it just based on the so-called family honor? It's a joke. Honor can't be eaten as food. Not only does it not have any benefits, but it also faces the risk of being hunted down by the Kirigakure. He must be crazy to be willing to dedicate himself to such a strange clan. However, these guys always want to recruit me. Maybe I can tease them. Looking at the two people opposite, he had an idea in his mind. Then, he replied loudly, "It's not impossible to negotiate if you want me to return to the Snow Clan, but I have a condition." "What condition?" Hearing the other party suddenly give in, Zuhu was delighted and hurriedly asked. Qishuang glanced at Zuhu in a suggestive way and said shyly, "This sister is so beautiful, why don't you be my girlfriend?" Hearing this, Zuhu twitched his mouth and his face suddenly darkened. Beside being teased by such a little boy, Zuhu was so angry that her face turned blue and red. She had originally thought of recruiting the other party, but at this moment, all that was left was shame and anger. "Damn little devil, how dare you tease me?" She was furious and drew out her kunai and immediately prepared to rush up to fight. Wait. At this moment, Zuhu suddenly reached out and pressed her shoulder. "Brother, let me go, I must kill him." Zuhu said to her brother with an angry face and struggled. Zuhu turned his head and winked at the boy with the eye that the boy couldn't see and said to the little sister seriously, "I'm the elder brother. I have the final say in this matter." Chapter 168, Sudden Rise. Although she didn't know what her brother was going to do, Zuhu suppressed her anger after receiving his hint, stopped struggling, and calmed down. "Do you like my sister?" Zuhu asked the boy opposite with a smile. "Yeah." Qishuang was slightly stunned and then nodded. "I like beautiful sisters." Although he was a little surprised by Zuhu's reaction, he continued to cooperate tirelessly, wanting to see what tricks the other party was going to play. Zuhu took a tentative step forward, and seeing that the other party did not overreact, he boldly walked over slowly and said with a smile, "As long as you follow us and return to the Snow Clan, I will decide to betroth my sister to you. How about it?" While speaking, his right hand, which was behind his back, had already tightly grasped a kunai. "Really?" Qishuang was excited. "Really?" Zuhu nodded solemnly, with a warm smile on his face, but he was extremely disdainful in his heart. A child is just a child after all. Although the other party's talent is much stronger than Th's, and he has almost the same strength as them at this age, he is far inferior to them in terms of life experience. It's really easy to deceive. He just followed the other party's words and deliberately lowered the other party's vigilance. Unexpectedly, he fell into the trap so easily. He only needs to approach the other party carefully, and then take advantage of the other party's unpreparedness, and he can kill this troublesome kid with one blow. Victory is just around the corner. But, I want something else. Qishuang said very seriously, pinching his chin with his left hand. The ice blade in his right hand not only did not loosen, but quietly injected a lot of chakra into it. With a kunai on his back, Zuhu slowly approached and pretended to be relaxed, saying, "You are really greedy. I promised to marry my sister to you. What else do you want?" As he said, he was less than 2 meters away from the boy. He quietly accumulated strength and prepared to attack. "I think, how about taking the heads of the 3 of you as dowry?" Qishuang shouted, and his feet flashed. He rushed over immediately, and the ice blade slashed from bottom to top, aiming at the scarred young man's head. Zuhu was frightened by the shout, not expecting the other party to attack suddenly. When he came to his senses, the other party had already rushed in front of him, and the ice blade in the lower left corner was slashing up. He lost the initiative, and had no time to dodge. He had to stretch out the kunai in his right hand to parry. Ding. The kunai and the ice blade clashed again, making a crisp collision sound. However, Zuhu did not feel much power on the ice blade this time. He easily blocked the opponent's attack. Just when he was puzzled, the ice blade actually slipped out of the child's hand, brushed his shoulder, and flew into the night sky. Haha, I'm dying of laughter. You dare to attack me without even holding a weapon. Zuhu, who escaped from the disaster, was in a very good mood. He took advantage of the situation, and aimed the kunai in his hand at the unarmed enemy in front of him, and slashed it back. Unfortunately, the opponent seemed to be well prepared. The moment the ice blade left his hand, he suddenly shot back and narrowly avoided his sure shot attack. After the two of them had a very thrilling confrontation, Zuhu on the other side finally came to his senses and shouted anxiously, "Brother, I'm fine." Looking at the opponent who retreated and escaped, Zuhu waved to his little sister behind him and said, "That kid cheated, and has no intention of returning to the Snow Clan at all. Let's work together to kill him. It seems that the situation over there is not good." As he said that, he glanced at the huge ice bowl in the middle of the street. Although the ice is transparent, it is not glass, and it seriously hinders the vision. With the moonlight, he can barely see the two figures, one big and one small, inside. The big one was obviously the snow bear, and the other one was the partner of the Miss Ninja boy in front of him. But at this moment, the snow bear had been forced to climb up the ice wall. This was completely unreasonable for the snow bear, who was good at head-on combat with the help of ice armor. There was no doubt that something went wrong in the battle on the snow bear's side. "If you want to kill me, you'd better take care of yourself first." Qishuang, who stood firmly on his feet, quickly completed a set of hand seals, and then said disdainfully, "Ice release, needle rain technique." The brother and sister looked up when they noticed a chakra fluctuation above their heads. They saw that the ice blade that had just flown out of the boy's hand suddenly shattered into countless half-foot-long ice needles during the fall, shining with a cold light under the moonlight. Go. With a thought, Qishuang controlled the ice needles and aimed them at the brother and sister below, shooting them down like a heavy rain. The two did not expect him to use such an ninjutsu at all. By the time they noticed it, it was too late to escape from the range of the technique. He had to wave his kunai quickly, hoping to block as many of the ice needles shot from the sky as possible. Thump, thump, thump. Many ice needles fell on the roof, pierced through the tiles, and nailed to the roof. Of course, under Qishuang's intentional control, more ice needles fell on the top of the brother and sister's heads. Unfortunately, the ninja's reaction ability is far superior to that of ordinary people. Even though the shooting of ice needles was very dense, urgent, and fast, the brother and sister still blocked a large part of the ice needles with the kunai in their hands. Snap, snap, snap. Along with the sound of ice needles being shattered by kunai, a layer of shallow broken ice appeared at the feet of the brother and sister soon. In the pile of broken ice, you can even clearly see many broken needle tips. The explosive ice needles came and went quickly. Soon, the ice needles in the sky were used up, and Zuhu and the other two were able to catch their breath. Kid, your attack is not painful, and you want to kill us with this? Ridiculous. Zuhu pulled out an ice needle from his shoulder, threw it away casually, and sneered with great disdain. The attack of the ice needles just now was too dense. Even though he blocked most of them, he was still hit by more than 10 ice needles. However, what surprised him was that the lethality of these ice needles was not very strong. In addition to being a little cold. Cold? Thinking of this, he suddenly understood something. He raised his hand and saw that his originally rosy skin had become a little more pale, and his finger joints were not as flexible as before. Zuha, quickly pull out all the ice needles on your body. He shouted loudly to the little sister next to him. Zuha's physical skills were worse than his. In the previous round of the opponent's attack, the number of needles was more than his. If he didn't quickly pull out all the ice needles on his body, he was afraid that, if he delayed for a while, he would become a lamb, to be slaughtered in the eyes of others. Do you think I will give you that opportunity? Qishuang sneered, and immediately pinched the seal, and used a ninjutsu. Ice escape, clone technique. A trace of cold air came out of his body, and entangled and gathered beside him. In the blink of an eye, the cold air condensed, and an identical figure appeared beside him. Give me the male, and you the female. Qishuang made a prompt distribution and immediately rushed towards Zuhu. Chapter 169 Explosion of Ice. The clone's strength was far inferior to the original body. Therefore, Qishuang chose to let the clone deal with the slightly weaker Zuha while he dealt with Zuhu. He did not expect the clone to defeat the opponent, but just wanted to use the clone to hold the opponent back and not give him a chance to remove the ice needles. If he delayed for one more second, the opponent's movements would become slower due to the penetration of the ice needle's cold air, and his final victory would be irreversible. Or, in other words, he had already laid the foundation for victory when the two were hit by his ice needles. Arsehole. Seeing the opponent use a clone to hold two of his own, Zuhu gritted his teeth in anger. But because of the penetration of the ice needle's cold air, his muscles and joints all over his body seemed to be rusted, and his movements became stiffer and not very smooth. If he fought head on with him, he would immediately fall into a disadvantage, and if it took a long time, he might have to leave his life behind. He had no choice but to retreat and dodge in embarrassment while taking the time to pull out one or two ice needles. His sister Zuha also suffered the same fate. Although she was facing the ice clone of Qishuang, which was not as strong as the original body, her own strength was not as good as her brother Zuhu, and she was not good at close combat. In addition, she failed to block the previous wave of ice needles, leaving more ice needles on her body. At this moment, she was invaded by the cold air, and was affected more seriously than Zuhu. Facing the relentless pressure of Qishuang's clone, she was in danger after only 2 or 3 rounds of fighting, and was completely at a disadvantage. Zuhu saw the situation of his younger sister, and was anxious in his heart, but he had no way to do anything. At the moment, he even had a problem protecting himself, and had no extra strength to rescue his sister. At this moment, he finally understood why the other side had only 2 Chunins, and came to hunt down the 3 of them. Because they were strong enough. In the middle of the street, in the huge ice bowl, Zuxian poured chakra into the soles of his feet, and firmly attached himself to the ice wall, temporarily avoiding the invasion of the milky white mucus. Meditarumi stood on a column of solidified molten mucus, spewing out molten mucus continuously. The entire road blocked by the ice wall had been covered with mucus by her, leaving no place to stand, and it looked like a pool of milky white mud. Even so, she still did not stop spewing mucus. Because of this sealed venue, the opponent restricted her range of movement, but also restricted the opponent's range of movement. Judging from the corrosion rate of the molten mucus on the ice wall, she had enough time to fill this small space with molten mucus before the mucus completely corroded the ice wall. By then, she would be able to force the opponent to have no way to avoid it and drown in this pool of molten mucus. It would not matter if the opponent lifted the ice wall technique in advance. Judging from the condition of that guy, such a technique should not be able to be used again in a short time. Without the space restriction of the ice wall, that clumsy guy like a bear would not be her opponent. Almost done. With a fearful look at the little girl in the rising pool of slime opposite, Snow Bear suddenly pressed his hands on the ice wall and infused the chakra that had been accumulated for a while into it. He wanted to detonate the entire cage ice wall and prepare to decide the outcome. Seeing the sudden movement of the opponent and sensing a faint dangerous aura in the ice walls around him, Terumi Mei secretly thought that it was not good. She immediately guessed what the opponent was going to do. Then he stopped spewing slime and controlled the slime at his feet to surge upwards, folding over his head like a quilt. At the same time, Snow Bear, who had completely spread his chakra to every inch of ice in the ice wall, launched the spell with red eyes. Ice release, ice explosion boom. With a deafening roar, the huge bowl of ice in the middle of the street exploded. Countless pieces of ice, some as big as chess pieces, some as big as fists, some as big as wash basins, and some as big as millstones. At this moment, it was like stray bullets flying in all directions. The smaller one smashed directly into the walls on both sides of the street. The larger one smashed into the house, accompanied by the sound of bottles and jars breaking. I don't know how many things were broken, and the people in the house were frightened and screamed. But strangely, the exclamation of the crowd only lasted for a moment, and soon it was silent. Except for the sound of ice smashing walls and furniture, nothing else could be heard. On the roof, Qishuang and his clone, who were pressing forward step by step, did not expect this sudden change. They were immediately stopped by the scattered ice. They had to abandon the opponent in front of them and concentrate on resisting the indiscriminate intensive attack. The scattering of the broken ice was too dense. His clone was accidentally hit by a few shots and immediately shattered into a pile of ice. And his original body was not much better. He was also hit by several shots of broken ice, and there were several more bloodstains all over his body. Even worse than him were the Zuhu brothers and sisters. The brother and sister were hit by his ice needles, and they had not had time to remove them completely. Their bodies were permeated by the cold air, and their mobility was far less flexible than before. At this moment, facing such a concentrated attack, it was even more difficult to resist. After just one encounter, they had countless scars on their bodies, and the oozing blood immediately dyed their bodies red. When the burst of broken ice finally stopped, the houses on both sides were already in tatters and were all beaten into sieves. The two houses closest to the ice bowl just now collapsed in half, and it was obvious that people could not live in them. The center of the explosion was piled with a thick layer of ice, and the surrounding road surface was completely broken, without an inch of intact roadbed. Where are the people? Blocking that round of indiscriminate attack, not caring about the Zuhu brother and sister on the other side. Qishuang anxiously looked for the traces of Terumi Mei. Such a violent explosion made him worry. What's more, Terumi Mei was in the center of the explosion and was attacked most directly. He couldn't rest assured until he saw that she was safe. On the other side, taking advantage of the time when he was not entangled, Zuhu and his sister hurriedly pulled out the remaining ice needles on their bodies. Unfortunately, after a period of delay, their bodies were severely invaded by the cold air, and they could not recover in a short time. In addition, the indiscriminate burst of broken ice just now, they were seriously injured, and their combat power at this time was less than half of their prime. I hope Zuxian can deal with that little girl, otherwise the three of us brothers and sisters might have to die here. Zuhu slowly helped his little sister up and said with a worried look on his face, "No way." Zuxian even detonated the cage. Zuhu took a breath and said, enduring the severe pain from the many broken ice on her body. The three brothers and sisters are very familiar with each other's skills. The previous round of broken ice burst was obviously the result of the snow bear's ice explosion. Enemies trapped by the ice wall of the cage will be hit by broken ice from all directions. In this case, only the snow bear protected by the ice armor can survive. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 170 Ruthless. Crash. There was a churning sound from the pile of broken ice. The three people on the roof immediately widened their eyes and saw a bloody arm suddenly sticking out of the pile of broken ice. Then, a sturdy figure pulled apart the broken ice and climbed out. Although he was ragged and covered with scars, Qishuang recognized it as Zhu Xiang at a glance. After all, the petite figure of Meditarumi was too different from him. Ha ha ha, I won. I won. After looking around and not finding the figure of the little girl, Zhu Xiang collapsed on the pile of broken ice and laughed out loud. Seeing him laughing heartily, the Zuhu brothers and sisters on the roof were also relieved. As long as Zhu Xiang solved the little girl, they would be 3 against 1. Even if they couldn't beat the remaining Mist Ninja Boy, they would still have no problem protecting themselves. No way. Qishuang, who also saw this scene, felt a little confused. With Meditarumi's strength, he didn't believe that he would be easily solved by a Chunin, but he didn't see her show up, which really made him a little worried. Just as he clenched his kunai and prepared to attack the seriously injured snow bear, other changes occurred in the pile of broken ice. In the center of the pile of broken ice, countless milky white mucus flowed out from the cracks of the broken ice. Then, the pile of broken ice in the center slowly sank, as if someone suddenly hollowed it out, and then a stream of milky white mucus gushed out like a fountain, flowing around unscrupulously. Those broken ice covered with mucus melted away in just a blink of an eye. Seeing this scene, the Snow Tiger brothers and sisters on the roof finally understood that the reason why the pile of broken ice sank was that the broken ice below was melted by the milky white mucus. It seems that my worry is a bit unnecessary. Qishuang shook her head gently. The milky white mucus was obviously the product created by Meditarumi using the dissolution escape. Since she still had the strength to use the dissolution technique, it meant that at least her life was safe. At the edge of the pile of broken ice, the scarred snow bear also noticed the sudden change and guessed that his opponent was not dead. He struggled to stand up, but because of the extremely powerful ice explosion just now, even with the protection of the ice armor, he was still seriously injured. After struggling for a few times, he still couldn't stand up. In the end, he had to stare wide-eyed and carefully watch the changes in the center of the broken ice, and secretly prayed, hoping that the little girl would also be seriously injured by his ice explosion. As the surrounding broken ice melted, under the nervous eyes of several people, a giant egg with milky white mucus gushing out of the top appeared in the middle of the pile of broken ice. Then the giant egg stopped gushing mucus and made a strange cracking sound. Everyone looked closely and saw that it was the place where the mucus had previously gushed out of the giant egg. There were cracks spreading down. Crack. The upper half of the milky white egg completely shattered, revealing a little brown-haired girl inside. That was Meditarumi. When the snow bear detonated the ice wall that trapped the two of them, she used her own molten escaping mucus to solidify into an egg-like sphere, protecting herself inside, and also quickly solidified the molten escaping mucus all over the ground. This was to prevent the molten escaping mucus from spreading with the explosion and causing more terrible consequences. After seeing the tragic scene of the broken ice raging around her, she was very glad that she solidified the molten escaping mucus all over the ground. Otherwise, the damage around the street would be twice as serious. "Are you okay?" Qishuang asked loudly. "It's okay, it's okay." Meditarumi waved her little hand, looked at the sturdy young man who collapsed on the broken ice with hatred, and replied, "The victory and defeat on my side have been decided. You have to cheer up." Then, she solidified all the mucus around her, and then holding a kunai, with a playful smile, she walked step by step towards the sturdy young man whose face was becoming more and more terrified. "It seems that the fate of you three siblings has come to an end." Seeing that the situation below was already decided, Qishuang turned around and looked at the Zuhu siblings on the other side of the roof and said jokingly. Zuxian looked so seriously injured that he could no longer make any waves. The only ones left were the Zuhu siblings here. "Brother, I'm scared." Being stared at by the boy's sharp eyes, Zuhua subconsciously shrank behind Zuhu. She felt the breath of death. "Don't be afraid, I'm here," Zuhu said calmly, and raised his hands to try to seal the spell. Unfortunately, because of the cold air invading his body, his fingers were stiff, as if they were tied by someone, and the speed of sealing was much slower than usual. Just as he was trembling and preparing to seal the third seal, he felt a flash in front of his eyes, and there was a figure in front of him, and his two hands that were sealing were clamped by the other party's hands. It was Qishuang who performed the instant body technique and moved in front of Zuhu at high speed. "Wait. I have something to say," Zuhu said anxiously when he saw the kunai swung by the boy's other hand. He hoped to stop the other party's attack. "Sorry, I don't want to negotiate with you. Please go on your way." The only response he got was the other party's cold and ruthless voice. The kunai swung by him didn't hesitate at all and cut his throat in an instant. "Go to hell." Zuhu, who was hiding behind her brother because of fear, also showed a resolute killing intention at this moment. Taking advantage of the moment when the boy cut her brother's throat, she rushed out with the kunai. Unfortunately, she was also invaded by the cold air, and her movements were very stiff. In addition, the injuries left by the burst of broken ice reduced her reaction speed to the extreme. Even if she calculated the time to attack, she still couldn't achieve the result she wanted. Just a slight delay in her movements, she lost the best opportunity to kill her opponent. With a slight turn of her face, Qishuang easily avoided Zuhu's kunai, and then twisted her waist and raised her leg to sweep, and immediately kicked the kunai in the opponent's hand, and swept the brother and sister out. Boom. The two were kicked down on the roof by Qishuang. Zuhu, who was holding on to his breath, but not completely dead, covered his bleeding neck with one hand, and opened his mouth to try to say something to his little sister next to him. But blood kept pouring out of his mouth, blocking his throat, and he could only make a strange chuckle. In the end, he stared with his eyes and stopped breathing unwillingly. "Big brother," Zuhu screamed, threw herself on Zuhu, and cried bitterly. Unfortunately, no matter how sad she cried, her brother could not survive. "You should go with him." Seeing that her crying was really heartbreaking, Qishuang stepped forward and stabbed her heart with a kunai from behind. The parting feelings between the brother and sister were indeed touching, but he could not let any of them go. What he could do was to end their parting pain as soon as possible. This was the greatest mercy he could give. Chapter 171 The Aftermath. "Are you done over there?" Qishuang took out a sealing scroll from her pocket and asked Terumi Medi without looking up. "Done." Terumi Medi pulled out a bloody kunai from the chest of the snow bear on the pile of broken ice and replied while stretching lazily. "These three guys are really annoying for disturbing my sweet dreams in the middle of the night." She yawned and complained again while covering her mouth. After unfolding the scroll and placing it on the bodies of the snow tiger brother and sister, Qishuang immediately made a few seals. Seal. He pressed his palm on the scroll and poured chakra into it. With a puff of white smoke rising, the two bodies under the scroll were immediately collected into the sealing scroll. It's not that he has any special ideas about the two bodies, but he wants to take the two bodies back to report. Of course, he can't just throw them away. Fortunately, there are sealing scrolls in this world, which are similar to space storage equipment. Otherwise it would be difficult for him to bring back the bodies of these three people. Although the scroll cannot seal living things, it can seal corpses. After collecting the bodies of Zuhu and the other two, Qishuang went down to the ground again, came to the pile of broken ice, and covered the body of the snow bear with the scroll again. While making a seal, he said to Miming, "Don't forget to deal with your molten escaping mucus. Those solidified mucus are simply not something that ordinary people can deal with." Seal. As soon as the voice fell, he pressed his right palm, which had accumulated chakra, on the scroll again, and did the same thing, putting the third corpse into the scroll. Got it, got it. Being nagging like this, Terumi Medi was a little impatient. Despite this, she pouted her little mouth and slowly walked to the center of the pile of broken ice, where the molten escaping mucus was solidified. She poured chakra into her palm, and made a seal on her chest. Release. She stomped her foot lightly, and the solidified molten escaping mucus in the pile of broken ice broke into pieces at a speed visible to the naked eye, and then dissipated into the air. Fake, after all, is fake. Chakra creations are not real natural substances after all. Their survival depends only on the thought of the caster. The solidified mucus broke and dissolved, causing the huge pile of ice to sink a long way. In the end, only a pile of broken ice that shone brightly under the moonlight remained. What should we do with these ice cubes? Meditarumi asked, tapping the broken ice with her toes. Qishuang put away the scroll and said slowly, don't worry about them. They should be almost melted by tomorrow morning. Unlike Meditarumi's hard solidified mucus, the ice will slowly absorb the heat in the air and slowly melt. They don't need to worry about it at all. Meditarumi yawned again, rubbed her sleepy eyes and said, in this case, I have to go back to take a shower and catch up on my sleep. As she said that, she instantly passed the broken glass window and returned to her room. After a glance around, Qishuang followed her back to the hotel. When the street calmed down again, the houses on both sides were all lit up. The dangerous ninjas retreated, and many ordinary people could no longer suppress their curiosity. They turned on the lights and investigated. The whole street was in a mess, and even many houses collapsed by nearly half. You could faintly hear crying sounds coming from the collapsed houses. Someone was crying for the misfortune they suffered. The battle of ninjas is like this. If ordinary people are involved in it, it will be a disaster. The lucky ones may only lose some property, and the unlucky ones may even lose their lives. However, no one heard any cries for help. I think that those who were affected by the battle tonight are a group of lucky guys, and no one was injured or killed. Then, the many windows that were lit up gradually dimmed. The messy battlefield satisfied the curiosity of everyone, leaving behind a feeling of boredom. There is really nothing to see in the broken streets and the broken ice on the ground. It is far better to sleep. The next morning, after Qishuang woke up naturally, he washed up and opened the door. He saw the innkeeper hesitating in the corridor. At the same time, seeing him open the door, the old man also greeted him with a shy smile. Is there something? Seeing that the old man's smile was a bit forced, he frowned and asked. That. The old man hesitated and hesitated. If you have something to say, just say it. I don't have time to chat with you. Qishuang said impatiently. He didn't like others to speak hesitantly. This sir, did you two fight with people on the street last night? The old man wiped the cold sweat from his forehead and asked carefully. What are you doing here? Just as Qishuang was about to answer, a familiar female voice interrupted. Turning his head, he saw that it was Meditarumi who opened the door and walked out. Hello, sir. The old man smiled and saluted to him. What did you just say? Meditarumi asked again. Seeing that both of them were staring at him, the old man took a step back and asked with a wry smile. The mayor knows that you two live here, so he asked me to ask. Did the fight last night have anything to do with the two adults? Hearing this, Qishuang looked at the old man meaningfully. He absolutely did not believe that the people around him did not see the big boys last night. The innkeeper's indirect words were really intriguing. Perhaps he was afraid of angering us, so he didn't dare to ask directly. He thought so. Next to him, Meditarumi didn't think too much and replied very cheerfully, yes, it was us who fought with the three guys from the Snow Clan last night. Why, do you have any questions, old man? She asked back curiously. This. Facing the fierce eyes of the two, the old man laughed dryly twice, and the words were stuck in his throat and he couldn't spit them out. You want to ask about the compensation for the damaged property, right? Seeing the old man's concerns, Qishuang reluctantly solved the siege. Yes. The old man looked at him gratefully and nodded repeatedly. Meditarumi smiled and said, old man, you don't have to worry at all. We are here for official business, not a private mission, so all losses will be compensated by the village. You can count them carefully and wait for them. The battle between ninjas is extremely destructive. If you are not careful, it will cause huge economic losses to ordinary people, so each major village has formulated corresponding compensation rules. For example, the mission of Qishuang and his team this time is to hunt down the rebels, which is a public matter of the village. The losses caused during the mission will naturally be compensated by the village. This is also the reason why Qishuang did not deliberately move the battlefield during the battle last night. If it is a private mission, if it causes losses to others, they will need to pay for it themselves. After all, they are from the land of water, the Kirigakure ninja, and they belong to the official force, not wandering ninjas, and they can't just walk away. If they refuse to compensate, once the Kirigakure village knows about the situation, the consequences will be hard to say. Then, after consoling them and paying for their board and lodging, Qishuang and the others set out on their journey back to Kirigakure. Although Kirigakure didn't have a very good reputation, it wasn't a rogue organization, but the official military force of the Land of Water. Chapter 172 Meeting. 3 people came to a small island in the middle of a lake outside the Hidden Mist village. The leader wore a blue bamboo hat with the word water on it. He was the third Mizukage. The other 2 were his personal guards. Greetings, Mizukage-sama. A hidden mist ninja stationed on the island found the Mizukage and his party on the island and immediately came to greet them. Ahem. The third covered his mouth and coughed a few times, then said softly, "How is he? Is he crazy and out of control?" The man lowered his head and said, "Except for the first few days, he howled a few times, and then he was very calm, and there was nothing abnormal." "That's good." The third nodded and waved his hand, saying, "Take me over to have a look." Hearing this, the mist ninja was stunned for a moment and hurriedly dissuaded. "No, Mizukage-sama, the man's condition is unknown and very dangerous. For your safety, you'd better not see him. Didn't you say that he was emotionally stable and there was nothing unusual?" Pushing the bamboo hat on his head, the third looked at him deeply. But, the man said with a sad face, "But, his stable mood does not mean that he is not dangerous. With your noble status, you should not take the risk to meet that dangerous monster that may go crazy at any time." The third generation said nonchalantly, "Don't you still have your sealing team? Even if he goes crazy, what's the problem? Could it be that you are all a bunch of good-for-nothings?" After saying that, he glanced around fiercely. In the thick fog, there were dozens of looming figures. That was the force he deliberately arranged on the island to guard and suppress that person. Well, okay. The third generation Mizukage had already said so much, and the welcoming mist ninja could not continue to refuse to stop him, so he had to bite the bullet and lead the way in front, leading the 3 people to the center of the island. Not long after, the group came to a cave, and there were 4 mist ninjas guarding the cave. "Greetings, Mizukage-sama." Seeing the blue bamboo hat with the word water, the 4 people guarding the cave bowed their heads in unison. "Mizukage-sama wants to see him. Open the barrier quickly." The mist ninja who led the way said to the 4 people immediately. "Yes." Without saying much, the 4 people immediately flipped their hand seals and performed a spell together. Then, they saw the chakra on the 4 people overflowing and flowing to the dark entrance of the cave, as if it was injected into something. As the chakra of the 4 people was transferred more and more, a light blue energy net with arcs appeared outside the cave. "Open." The 4 people shouted in unison, and then a gap more than 1 person high appeared in the energy grid. "Sir, the barrier has been opened." The leading mist ninja bowed his head and said to the man with the bamboo hat, "Let the sealing team get ready." Turning his head and giving a warning, the third generation walked in through the gap in the barrier with 2 guards. Outside the barrier, the 4 mist ninjas stopped their chakra output, and the barrier gap was restored. Then they disappeared into the air again, as if they did not exist at all. Inside the cave, 2 guards lit torches, 1 in front and 1 behind, protecting the third Mizukage in the middle, and then slowly moved deeper into the cave. However, in the cave, there was nothing except the rubble on the ground and the occasional cold water droplets dripping on the neck. Ta. The space inside the cave was not large. With the clear echo of footsteps, the 3 of them quickly walked around, but found nothing. "Sir, will he break through the barrier and escape?" The guard in front whispered to the Mizukage. Based on his understanding of that thing, it is not impossible for him to break through the barrier and escape. "Asshole." The Sandai cursed angrily, coughed twice, and said with a dark face, "Dozens of people guarding a barrier, and someone sneaked out without knowing it. Where do you think this is?" "This is a hidden mist village." After losing his temper, he coughed rapidly again. "Don't be angry, sir." The guard behind him hurriedly said, "He just said it casually, because he couldn't find the trace of that person here. Maybe, that person is hiding somewhere in this cave. Finally someone is willing to use his brain." The Sandai shook his head, covered his mouth and coughed twice, stopped and said, "Aren't you tired of playing, Yagura? Yagura? Yagura?" Hearing the Mizukage suddenly mention this name, the 2 guards' faces tightened. While searching for the enemy, they took a defensive posture, as if facing a great enemy. Yagura was the person that the third Mizukage entered here to meet. He is also the new Three Tails Jinchuriki. Since the last time the Kirigakure failed to use the Three Tails to destroy Konoha, the Kirigakure transferred the Three Tails back into the body of the Jinchuriki they had chosen earlier. That person was called Yagura. However, this method of sealing the tailed beast in the human body in the hope that the Jinchuriki could control the power of the tailed beast has been around for a long time, but there are still few people who can perfectly control the power of the tailed beast. Most of the Jinchuriki cannot completely control the power of the tailed beast, and the tailed beast will go berserk from time to time. Especially at the beginning of the seal of the tailed beast, the Jinchuriki and the tailed beast just started to come into contact, and the two need a certain amount of time to adapt. During this process, the Jinchuriki will go berserk and lose control most frequently. This is also the reason why the Kirigakure did not agree to the contact between the Mizukage and Yagura, who had recently become the Jinchuriki. It is too dangerous. Since you have found me, then play with me for a while. Just as the two guards were nervously looking for Yagura's trace, a young man's laughter came from above. Then, a dark figure suddenly fell from the top of the cave, holding a long weapon, and swept straight towards the third Mizukage. Yagura, you dare. The two guards who noticed the enemy attack screamed, and then pulled out their kunai, and chopped at the boy who appeared beside the three people, ready to rescue. Unfortunately, they were still a step slower, and the stick-like weapon in the boy's hand had already swept the Mizukage's waist. Wow. The third Mizukage who was swept by the stick-like weapon immediately turned into a pool of clear water on the ground. Water clone. I was wondering how it was so easy to succeed. Seeing this scene, the boy curled his lips, a little depressed. At the same time, the kunai of the two guards also arrived in front of him. Clang. Yagura attracted the stick-like weapon and immediately blocked the attack of the two people, and took advantage of the impact of the two people to withdraw, and immediately escaped from the attack range of the two people. Stop. Just as the two were about to chase, the familiar voice of the Mizukage came from above. With the help of the firelight, the two looked up, and saw that the Mizukage had climbed up to the top of the cave at some point, and was hanging upside down there to stop them. My lord, but Yagura just... Seeing the two people's unwillingness, the Mizukage continued, forget it, he has no intention of killing, he just wants to play with us. As he said that, he put away the chakra on his feet, and landed on the ground again. Most fanfiction is a one-man show, and my writing style seems a bit different, so some people feel that the protagonist has a low sense of presence. In fact, if you treat my work as a group portrait drama, you won't have this feeling. Chapter 173 Arrows. Part 1. When did you find me? Carrying the hooked stick-like weapon on his shoulder, Yagura looked at the man in the bamboo hat curiously and asked, ahem. Sandai coughed twice and said slowly, I found you when you climbed to the top of the cave. Then why are you still wandering around here with these two rubbish? Yagura said unconvincedly, and rolled his eyes at the two guards. You. Being ridiculed for no reason. The two Mist Ninja guards were so angry that they were about to fight again. Sandai hurriedly stopped them and said, forget it. He's just a naughty child. You don't have to take him too seriously. Hearing what he said, the two Mist Ninja guards had to glare at the boy unwillingly and swallowed their resentment. You are still generous, old man, unlike these two guys who are so stingy. Seeing this, Yagura looked at the Mizukage with great appreciation, pulled down his eyelids, and made a face at the two guards. Lululu. Seeing his childish appearance, the two guards felt annoyed, but because of the words of the Mizukage, they had to ignore the boy's provocation and pretend that they didn't see anything. Seeing that the two no longer paid attention to him, Yagura had to put away his grimace, curled his lips helplessly, and slowly walked towards the man wearing a bamboo hat with his weapon on his shoulder, and asked nonchalantly, okay, Mizukage deliberately came to this dark cave to find me, what are you going to do? Stop. Please don't get close to Mizukage, Yagura. The two guards immediately blocked the third Mizukage. Forget it. The third waved his hand to signal the two to step back and said, I'm not so weak that I dare not let anyone get close to me. But the two guards were unmoved and diligently blocked the boy 2 meters away. One of them turned his head and said, but sir, Yagura just now. Before he could finish his words, the third generation glanced at the dark cave, frowned and said, "It's too dark here, let's talk slowly outside." After that, he followed the light of the exit and walked out on his own. Seeing this, the two guards no longer wanted to stop Yagura and hurriedly followed with torches. What the hell? Unable to guess what the other party was thinking, Yagura shook his head helplessly and then slowly followed. Outside the cave, seeing the third generation Mizukage approaching the exit, the 4 mist ninjas guarding the barrier immediately cast a spell to open the barrier. "Don't rush to open it, I have something important to deal with." The third generation stopped loudly. Then, the 4 people outside the barrier stopped. Then, they saw the rest of the people slowly appearing from the darkness, but when they saw the 4th figure appear, everyone couldn't help but sweat. It was a boy with light green hair, a long suture-like scar on his left face, carrying a stick-shaped hook with a small flower embedded on the hook. "It's him. Kumi Yagura. Why did he come out?" The 4 of them were very nervous and immediately took a defensive stance. The mist ninjas who had been lurking in the surrounding bushes also appeared one after another. All of them looked like they were facing a great enemy. "Don't be nervous, I have something to say to him." The third generation waved his hand and signaled everyone to retreat. Then, the mist ninjas disappeared into the forest again. The 4 people guarding outside the barrier finally breathed a sigh of relief. On the other side, Yagura looked at the mist ninjas with disdain, put his weapon aside, leaned against the stone wall and asked, "Okay, now Mizukage-sama can tell me why you are looking for me, right? Yagura, please show the respect you deserve for the adults." Seeing his lazy appearance, a guard was so angry that he shouted loudly, "Forget it." The Sandaime hurriedly stopped him, coughed twice, looked at the boy and asked, "How is the 3 tails in your body?" Yagura thought for a moment and recalled, "In the first month, it was very noisy, trying to compete with me for control of the body every day. In the past month, it has been much quieter, which has made me less fun." Hearing this, several people present couldn't help but wipe their cold sweat. The emotionally noisy 3 tails has been treated as a toy by the naive Yagura. He is looking forward to it making noise every day. However, for the mist ninjas who are guarding him, every time the 3 tails makes a fuss, it is the most distressing time for them. They are afraid that Yagura will not be able to hold on and completely transform into a tailed beast, which will be a lot of fun. After all, a complete tailed beast is completely different from a jinkriki with abnormal chakra. Facing a complete tailed beast, if you are not careful, it will lead to an irreparable disaster. Yagura, who didn't notice the strangeness of the crowd, seemed to remember something when he said this, and excitedly said to the man in the bamboo hat, "Hey, old man, I'm bored here alone. Can you send a few people in to play with me?" Hearing this, the third generation coughed twice and said with a wry smile, "The 3 tail on your body makes a fuss from time to time. Who dares to come in and play with you? But, I'm really bored here alone." Yagura complained loudly and pointed at the 4 people outside the barrier and said angrily, "They are guarding outside and don't even want to talk to me. They are like dead people. There is no fun at all." Hearing this, the 4 people outside the barrier turned their heads away and dared not look at him again. Seeing this, the third generation smiled bitterly and said, "You are still in the observation period. When we are sure that the seal on your body is completely stable, you and the 3 tail are completely compatible, and you will not easily lose control again, I will let you out." "Then, how long will this observation period last?" Yagura asked anxiously. "It depends on you." The Sandaime looked at him deeply. "Me?" Yagura was a little confused. The Sandaime said slowly, "The fundamental reason why the jinkriki went out of control is that the jinkriki himself did not have enough control over the chakra of the tailed beast. Influenced by the will of the tailed beast, he did things he could not control. If you can learn to control the power of the tailed beast as soon as possible, then I won't have to trap you here." Hearing this, Yagura seemed to understand something, and then he slowly stretched out his right hand and asked in confusion, "Old man, is this what you said about controlling the power of the tailed beast?" As he spoke, in the surprised eyes of several people, a layer of red chakra appeared on Yagura's right hand, attached to his arm like foam. 3 tail? My lord, be careful. Realizing that it was the chakra of the tailed beast, the 2 guards immediately protected the man in the bamboo hat behind them and took a defensive stance with a solemn face. In the bushes outside the cave, many mist ninjas who had been hidden suddenly rushed out and surrounded the exit of the cave. Unexpectedly, everyone would react so strongly, and Yagura was stunned. "Sir, you go first. We will cover you." A guard stared at the boy's red right arm and shouted with his back to the Mizukage. "What are you panicking about? Everyone, retreat." The calm voice of the third Hokage was like a shot of adrenaline injected into everyone's hearts, and the scene immediately quieted down. The third Hokage was once the guard of the first Hokage, and he was older than the third Hokage. There was nothing wrong with Yagura calling him an old man. Chapter 174 Arrows, Part 2. Can you control the power of the three tails? The third Mizukage asked solemnly, pushing aside the two people in front of him and facing the boy's clear purple eyes. There was no sense of frenzy in the other's eyes that the tailed beast had taken over his consciousness. In other words, it was Yagura who controlled the chakra in his right hand with his own consciousness, not the tailed beast running wild. If that's all, I think I should be able to control the three tails. Yagura nodded lightly, clenched his palms, and the red chakra immediately shrank into his body and disappeared. Then, under the nervous gaze of everyone, he spread his palms, and a layer of red foamy chakra appeared on his arms again. Then, he clenched his palms again, and the red chakra disappeared into his body. When his palms were opened, it reappeared. Over and over again, he controlled the red chakra to appear and disappear, and he was having a lot of fun, as if no one was around. On the other side, the Sandai was so shocked that he said, "If you can only control a little bit of the tailed beast's chakra, it can only be considered preliminary control. It is still a long way from controlling the true power of the tailed beast." Hearing this, the boy who was having a lot of fun immediately became depressed and asked unwillingly, "What standard do you have to reach to be qualified?" "Well." The Sandai held the bamboo hat and thought for a while, then slowly said, "At least you have to cover the whole body with the chakra of the tailed beast without losing your mind, so that you can be qualified. Is that so?" Looking at the stones at his feet, Yagura sighed helplessly. "Then how much tailed beast chakra can you control now?" the Sandai asked curiously. Yagura's adaptation speed to the three-tail far exceeded his imagination. He originally thought that it was already amazing that the other party could control the three-tail from making trouble in such a short time. Unexpectedly, the other party could not only stabilize the three-tail, but also initially control some tailed beast chakra. Such a speed of progress really surprised him. He had a hunch that Yagura would become a powerful three-tails Jinchuriki. Now, Yagura thought about it seriously and continued, "Now I can only use the tailed beast's chakra to cover my hands, no more. If I use more, I won't be able to suppress the consciousness of that big guy. That big guy is very fierce. Every time I use a little bit of its chakra, it is very unhappy and has been making trouble in my heart for a long time." Speaking of that big guy, he seemed to remember some unpleasant experience, curled his lips, and looked unhappy. "It's okay, take your time." The third generation slowly stepped forward, patted the boy's shoulder happily, and continued, "I believe that one day, you can completely control its power. Not like now, only a little bit." Then, he looked at the gradually darkening sky, turned back and said, "It's getting late, I should go back. I'll see you next time. I hope that next time, when I come again, you can control more of its power. Then you can leave here." "Are you leaving now?" Hearing that the Mizukage and his party were about to leave, Yagura was very reluctant. It's not that he has any special feelings for the third Mizukage, but he is imprisoned here alone, and it's really boring. What's more, the group of mist ninjas guarding the barrier outside are unwilling to communicate with him, and there is not even one person to talk to. The Mizukage and his group are the only ones who have come to visit him and talk to him since he was imprisoned. If possible, he would like them to stay here for a few more days. "I still have official business to deal with in the hidden mist village. I can't stay here for too long. I'll come to see you next time," the third said to Yagura with a smile, and then gestured to the four people guarding the barrier outside. The four first looked at Yagura not far from the entrance of the cave, and hesitated a little. After seeing the calm expression of the Mizukage, they gritted their teeth and worked together to open the barrier. "I look forward to seeing you next time." After leaving this sentence, the Mizukage walked out of the barrier exit slowly with two nervous guards. and the 4 mist ninjas outside the barrier quickly closed the barrier exit after the Mizukage and his group came out. Yagura leaned against the stone wall in a daze, watching the few people go away until he could no longer see their backs. Then he turned back to the cave, disappeared in the darkness. On the other side, Qishuang and the other person returned to the hidden mist village and immediately handed over the bodies of the 3 brothers and sisters of Zuhu. Along with the bodies, their compensation list was also delivered. Fortunately, there were no casualties of unrelated personnel in the battle that night. After complaining a few words, the person in charge of task statistics still gave a good evaluation and reported his completion of the task. Then, the hidden mist and Boo removed his name from the cleansing list. Like him, there are many people who were removed from the cleansing list. After all, the Snow Clan and the Wind Clan are both large bloodline limit families in the hidden mist village, and the related personnel are very wide. It is understandable to eliminate the 2 clans in the name of rebellion, but there are still many people who can be killed or not. After years of war, the hidden mist village, which has been severely damaged, cannot kill this part of people with one knife. It is enough to eliminate the 2 tribes and other people who directly rebelled. However, people are always emotional creatures. In the list in the hands of the Kirigakure and Boo, in addition to those who are like Qishuang who ruthlessly draw a line with the rebels, there are also some people who are reluctant to give up and are unwilling to make a decision. Of course, what awaits them can only be the judgment of the Kirigakure and Boo. When Qishuang and others returned to the village, Zabuza, who had been in a coma for many days in the hospital, also woke up. However, like King, he could not recover in a short time due to his severe injuries, and could not get out of bed for the time being. Do you still remember what you promised me? Zabuza looked at Qishuang on the hospital bed and asked. Don't worry. Qishuang waved her hand and said helplessly, I have always remembered it. However, with your current appearance, you can see the result without any comparison, right? As he said, he jokingly glanced at his companion who was tightly wrapped in bandages on the bed. Hearing this, Zabuza blushed and replied, of course I'm not talking about now. I will take care of my body, recover completely, and then compete with you seriously. Seeing his serious look, Qishuang shook his head and sighed. Is this competition really that important to you? If you really want to win, then I'll admit defeat. He was not interested in competitions. Fighting is not a joke, it is to kill the enemy by all means, which is very different from a competition that stops at the right time. In the case of not being able to kill the enemy, both parties will have concerns, and it will be difficult to perform. If one side is much stronger than the other, it is not difficult to determine the winner, but if the gap between the 2 sides is not big, then the fight will be uncomfortable. And he and Zabuza are exactly the latter. Chapter 175 Freedom. Give up. Zabuza was slightly stunned and said solemnly, don't forget, you promised me that you would compete with me seriously. Okay, I'll be serious. Seeing the other party's persistence, Qishuang knew that if he couldn't satisfy him, he would definitely bother him constantly in the future, so he immediately gave up the idea of giving up. Fortunately, Zabuza's injuries were too serious, and he couldn't recover completely in a short time. At least, he didn't have to worry about Zabuza's affairs now. As the frontline mist ninjas gradually withdrew, the deserted mist village gradually became lively. Unfortunately, some families were happy, while others were sad. Years of war and chaos have caused countless deaths and injuries in the village. It is not an exaggeration to say that every family is in mourning. These surviving ninjas barely diluted the sad atmosphere in the village. Bring back a little comfort to the relatives and friends who stayed at home. 6 months later, the top leaders of Mist Village and Konoha reached a complete ceasefire agreement. At this point, the war between Mist Village and Konoha officially ended. At the same time, Sand Village and Rock Village on the western front also signed an armistice agreement at about the same time, officially ending the war. As for the Cloud Village, after the plan of the Mist Village to destroy Konoha with the Three Tails failed, they saw that the situation was over and retreated to the Land of Lightning early, choosing to preserve their strength. The war between the 5 major countries came to an end, known as the Third Ninja World War. On the small island in the middle of the lake outside the Mist Village, in the dark cave, Yagura sat cross-legged in meditation, concentrating his mind and calming his breath, sinking his thoughts into the deepest part of his heart. He came to the sealed place where the Three Tails was imprisoned. This was a skill he had learned after months of exploration. Through this means, he could reach the sealed place and see the Three Tails. He was the only one in the entire cave, and the group of Miss Ninjas outside the barrier were unwilling to pay attention to him at all, and he couldn't even find a companion to talk to. Fortunately, there was still a Three Tails in his body that he could communicate with in a friendly way, otherwise he would doubt whether he would suffocate here alone. Little boy, what are you doing here again? In the dim sealed space, a giant turtle-like beast with grey armor and tied up by chains glowing with electric light said to the boy who suddenly appeared in the space, "It's okay, can't I come? This is my territory." Yagura walked over slowly and said in a relaxed manner. The giant turtle-like grey armor beast was the three-tailed beast sealed in his body. The three-tailed beast glanced at the boy with its lantern-sized single eye and mocked, "I think you can't stand the loneliness, right?" I don't. Yagura, whose heart was touched, blushed and argued cunningly, and sat down cross-legged not far in front of the beast. "You humans are such hypocritical creatures." Sanwei shook his head slightly, and continued in a dull voice, "Before they sealed me into your body, they took care of you in every possible way, but after I sealed me into your body, they were afraid of you like a ghost. I wish I could throw you far away, but I couldn't bear to do so. I could only set up a barrier to imprison you here. How unfair they are to you. How about I help you break the barrier and escape? With my help, you don't have to be afraid of being hunted down by the Hidden Mist Village. As long as you leave here, you can start to live freely. You don't have to spend your days alone in this dark cave." At the end, its voice became softer, like an elder caring for a younger generation. If Yagura hadn't heard it with his own ears, he wouldn't have believed that such a ferocious beast could say such gentle words. "No. You lied to me. You're lying." Yagura looked straight at the other's one-eyed man and said, "No, I didn't lie to you. I'm really doing this for your own good." Sanwei persuaded patiently. Yagura shook his head and said seriously, "People say that eyes are windows to the soul, and you can see what others are thinking through their eyes. And I see deception in your eyes. You are lying." Looking at the pair of serious and pure purple eyes, the three-tailed beast immediately fell silent. After a short silence, it responded with its hysterical roar. "Asshole, I will tear you apart. Tear you apart." It struggled to stretch out its claws, wanting to slap the boy who was close at hand, but its claws stopped on the boy's head, and it could no longer slap. It was not that it was reluctant, nor that it did not dare, but that it could not. At this time, the electric light chain wrapped around its limbs and body had been stretched straight by it, reaching the limit of its movement. At the moment, when the chain was stretched straight by it, the sealed space seemed to be stimulated by its violent activity and immediately responded with suppression. The electric light of the chain that bound the giant beast suddenly surged, and the blue-purple electric arc instantly enveloped the giant beast. Raw, the electric current suddenly surged through the whole body. Sanwei was not prepared at all, and screamed in pain. After a long time, when the arc subsided, and the giant beast calmed down, Yagura slowly said, "You know it is impossible to hurt me, but every time we meet, you still want to try. Can you tell me why?" "Why?" Sanwei sneered and said, "Just like they imprisoned you in this dark cave, you are unwilling. Naturally, I'm unwilling to stay in this small sealed space. I want to leave here. I want to live freely." As he spoke, his voice became more and more excited. Yagura even suspected that, if he had not just received an electric shock and felt pain, the other party might have planned to attack him again. After the other party calmed down, Yagura said calmly, "I'm not unwilling, and I have never thought of escaping from here." "No, you are lying." Sanwei looked at him sarcastically and continued, "You are my Jinchuriki. We are symbiotic. Just like you can see through my lies, I can also sense part of your heart. You just pretend to be willing and obedient in front of others. You actually want to leave here. You hate being alone. You hate loneliness. You want to play with others, chat with others, and go shopping together. You also long for a free life." "No, I don't." Interrupting the giant beast's words, Yagura stood up suddenly and refuted loudly. However, his flickering eyes were not as firm as his words. "If not, why are you here?" Sanwei mocked unceremoniously. Since mastering the skills to enter here, Yagura comes here every day. Even if it doesn't want to pay attention to him, he still comes here every day with a thick face. I just. Yagura buried his head and his voice gradually weakened. Just as Sanwei said, it was because of loneliness that he came down here to meet him. He really wanted to leave here. He wanted to live freely. Seeing that he didn't say anything, Sanwei continued, at least, you still have a chance to leave here, while I will be trapped in this dark seal forever by you. You said, shouldn't I kill you? At the end of his words, an extremely fierce killing intent burst out from Sanwei's body. Being rushed by the killing intent, Yagura suddenly came back to his senses and took a few steps back in fear. Even though he was born in the Kirigakure, which was famous for killing, it was the first time for him to encounter such a strong killing intent. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.